It's 6:31, and the regular session of the San Gabriel City Council is now in order. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Liao.
Thank you, Mayor. Please rise and face the flag. Place your right hand at your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pooh?
Here.
Vice Mayor Menchaca?
Here.
Councilmember Costanzo?
Here.
Councilmember Harrington?
Here.
Councilmember Liao?
Here.
Okay. Next item is approval of agenda order. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any objections? Seeing none, the agenda order is approved. No presentations tonight. Public comment, please.
This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on items of interest that are not on the agenda but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the San Gabriel City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda. In an effort to provide everyone with an opportunity to speak tonight, please be aware that all public comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will receive a 30-second warning as you approach the end of your time. As a reminder, please be respectful of all speakers regardless of the position they take on any items. If you wish to address the City Council, we request that you please complete a speaker's request card and hand it to the clerk. When speaking, please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Sharon. We do have a few speakers request cards already. If you would like to speak, please come forward and fill out one for yourself. First one we have is Francisco Martinez. How do you do?
Council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak at this meeting. My name is Francisco Martinez with the Southern California Edison. I am covering tonight for Jeanette Soriano. She is still a representative, but I'm just here tonight for this brief update. As you already know, wildfires have devastated our state in a way we haven't experienced before. 10 of California's 20 most destructive wildfires have occurred since 2015. At Edison, our top priority is ensuring the safety of our customers, communities, and employees, and we're working hard to reduce wildfire risk throughout our territory. In February, we filed our wildfire mitigation plan with the PUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, and has been approved by regulators. In short, this plan will further harden our infrastructure, bolster situational awareness capabilities, enhance operational practices, and harness the power of data and technology to help mitigate wildfires. We've already begun implementing some components of our wildfire mitigation plan. To further harden our infrastructure, we replaced more than 150 miles of power lines with covered conductor. These power lines are covered with insulation material that mitigate the risk of sparks occurring when a foreign object makes contact with an energized line, which for SCE has been the leading cause of ignitions. We're installing over 15,000 faster acting fuses, which will interrupt electric currents more quickly and should significantly reduce the risk of ignitions when there is a short circuit on our distribution circuits. We're also adding more remote-controlled automatic reclosers on circuits serving high fire risk areas to prevent interrupted circuits from automatically re-energizing or turning back on. We're inspecting all of our overhead equipment in high fire risk areas to identify and remediate potential issues outside of our standard inspection cycles. To bolster our situational awareness capabilities, we've been installing more weather stations, advanced weather modeling software, and computer and high-definition cameras in high fire risk areas, increasing our ability to accurately predict inclement weather conditions and identify and proactively repair equipment. This year, we launched a robust vegetation management program, which included inspecting an additional 125,000 potentially hazardous trees in high fire risk areas and expanding the area we examine trees up to 200 feet on either side of our lines, depending on the size of the trees. We're also using infrared cameras to identify potential issues on our equipment that could lead to fire ignitions. And we've been enhancing our Public Safety Power Shutoffs PSPS program, the practice of preemptively turning off power during high fire risk weather conditions, by using our increased situational awareness capabilities to drive more precise decision-making around potential events. With a wildfire mitigation plan, we're setting the bar high and going forward beyond traditional and good utility practices to protect the safety of our customers, communities, and employees. To restore a fair regulatory compact, we believe the state needs clear rules on allocating wildfire recovery costs through a method that minimizes the impacts on customer bills. A recent UC Berkeley study found that without fundamental changes to laws or industry software, rates would skyrocket on average by 50% in the first year to keep up with any new wildfires. Once again, thank you for your time. Francisco Martinez with Edison.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Luke Choi from the Gracias Music Foundation.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and Council members. My name is Luke Choi. I came from Gracias Music Foundation. So it is my pleasure to invite you and your loved ones to the 2019 Gracias Christmas Cantata, the show-stopping musical production that audiences in over 40 countries have come to cherish. This year, the Gracias Christmas Cantata is back with all new Act 2. And this year, the Gracias Christmas Cantata is coming to the Long Beach Terrace Theater on Sunday, September 29th, 2019 with 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. show times. So IYF and GMF request your esteemed presence as our distinguished guest to the VIP reception at 5 p.m. at the Westin Long Beach, located directly across the street from the theater. So we would be honored to offer you entire party reserved seats at either the 3 p.m. or 7 p.m. shows to guarantee the best cantata viewing experience possible. So Christmas is coming only this year in September. We would love to explore ways in which we can work together to provide programs for your city. So some examples of programs include volunteering for city events, cultural festival, and cultural performances like African, South American, Indian, Asian cultures, Korean language and culture classes, mindset education training for police, fire, and other departments, and leadership and music camps for youth, English camps for youth to go to Mexico, Haiti, Puerto Rico, other areas unique to your city. So the Gracias Christmas Cantata brings people together, family, friends, neighbors, and even complete strangers. We are dedicated to showcasing the power of music that changes hearts, lives, and communities. Now more than ever, we need to unite as people, and Gracias Christmas Cantata has proven to do just that. Please join us in celebrating the Christmas spirit, and especially we are also about to start an international school, so we would like to invite you and to come and see what about to see this about this organization and get to know about this organization. And so thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Choi. Next speaker's request card is from Debbie Kilgore.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Kilgore, and I'm here regarding a mailer that I received in the mail last week. It's this orange card, and it's talking about an Arroyo Village, which is a condominium project that is coming to this area. This project was started, the first letter I received was in 2005. This project is still going on. It started out with 72 units. It went down to 46, and this new project came out as 41 units right now. I'm concerned that the 500 people I was told this was sent to, that because of the language on it and the terminology, many people will not understand it. 500, I bet the planning department will hear from 50 people or less. I have several concerns about this. This is a project that is building a bridge across the Arroyo Wash. Many people do not realize that this piece of property, there is San Gabriel on the west side of Arroyo Drive, and there will be a bridge going across that. That will be the only access to the property. I have a lot of concerns. They're in the Mission District and Arroyo Residential. There are a lot of guidelines. When you go on site, if you look up 235, you'll see a website to go to and a plan. When you hit the plans are from 2013, 46 units. But in looking at that plans, which is what one of the pictures looks like on the project with the new information about this, is the same exact plan. Also, the height up there, the height of buildings in San Gabriel is 33 feet. Mission District is 48. This project is 60 feet or even higher from ground to the top level of the roof. That's a concern. Also, there's no markings for the setback from the river wash. That should be 15 feet. But on the plans, there's no definition of what that setback. So I have a lot of concerns about variances and changes that are rules and regulations that are going to this project. Also, this is a project that a lot of people need to know about, but I would have liked to seen a community meeting in the middle of the time frame from September 9th to October 9th, I believe, is when that 1 month period you have time to respond to the planning department about it. So there are just a lot of concerns. And the biggest issue that has never been addressed in all the meetings, community meetings and things like this, is safety issues. With this bridge and this condominium unit, you have 100 parking spaces over there. It comes right onto an area of Arroyo Drive where there are no sidewalks on either side. The side that this building is being on that one stretch of Arroyo Drive, there are no sidewalks. Across the street, there are no sidewalks. And this is an area where people are walking north to go to all the bus stops to get up to Las Tunas and Mission. And there's children being walked with their parents, there are people with dogs. And the people that, when they get on the street at that area, Mays Alley and this property, they go through the driveways. My driveway and my neighbor's driveway across the street. So I think we need to look at this and have a community meeting very soon regarding this. And language needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kilgore.
Ms. Kilgore, it's my understanding that you had a conversation with Armine Chaparian, our assistant city manager this morning. No, I didn't. Okay. She's in the back of the room, and she'd be happy to talk to you about it.
I talked to the planner, and he doesn't know very much about this property.
Okay. Armine is in the back. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker's request card is from Valerie Munoz from the San Gabriel Basin Water Quality Authority. Hey, Valerie.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm Valerie Munoz, Mayor for the City of La Puente, but more importantly, you're a representative on the Water Quality Authority representing cities with non-pumping rights. I'm here again just to say hello and also let you know that I'm still working for you on the Water Quality Authority. One of my main goals was to be accessible and to provide information to cities that I represent on the Water Quality Authority. I have also provided you just a general overview that kind of gives you a brief overview of what the agency does in addition to my contact information. But just to give you an overview, the WQA has secured over $500 million in settlement funds that help clean the basin over the last 2 decades. Back in 1993, the legislator put this agency together, and the whole purpose was to make sure that we can clean up the contaminated aquifers in the San Gabriel Basin. And it's approximately $1.3 billion to complete the project, and so we are continuously working to ensure that we secure the funding for that to provide safe and clean water to our residents as well. There are a total of 6 operable units ranging from South El Monte, Baldwin Park, Puente Valley, Whittier Narrows, and Alhambra operable unit. And as of today, 81 tons of contaminants have been removed from the basin. So I just wanted to bring you just a general update. In addition to that, there is an invitation if any residents as well as council members or staff would like to schedule a tour to give you a better overview of the basins as well as the current cleanup efforts. It's a 90-minute presentation. Just contact me at any time and we'd be more than happy to provide that information for you. And again, it's not only open to council members and city staff, but residents as well that may want some information as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Munoz. Those are all of the speaker's request cards I have. Is there anybody else who would like to address the San Gabriel City Council? Bless you. Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. Next is the consent calendar.
All items items listed under the consent calendar are considered routine, and recommendations will be approved in one motion unless a member of the City Council or audience requests separate discussion.
All right, is there,
I was
Councilmember
going to move
Harrington?
consent without objection.
I'm just going to abstain from approving the minutes since I wasn't present.
Okay. I guess I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar from Councilmember Harrington. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Councilmember Costanzo was there just a second ahead, so motion and second, and I guess just abstention on item 4A from Vice Mayor Menchaca, correct? All right, let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Public hearing. Item A, adoption of resolution number 19-31 to update the city's citywide fee schedule. Presentation will be made by Management Specialist and Acting Finance Director Paula Chamberlain.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. You have before you tonight the 2019-20 citywide fee schedule. The fee schedule is reviewed and adopted annually. It's typically part of the budget process. It's a little later than that this year because we redesigned the whole budget document and had to take a little bit more time. As far as looking at the fee schedule, we did spent more time on it as well. We have a new format for 2019-20. It's all inclusive, so we have reviewed the budgets for the last 20 years. We've looked at resolutions back to 1992, and everything that we have found that has been adopted at one time or another is now in this all-inclusive, comprehensive fee schedule. Some pages in there are just informational only. They will be updated independently. Those are the ones for the development impact fees, which were approved by resolution and have automatic escalators in them. We have some recommendations before you tonight that will be based on other bases like LA County Public Works fees, and those will just be shown as informational only and will be updated independently of those. We have also added an additional reference column, which we'll talk about on the next slide. Some of the new fees that we've put in there, we did take a look at the 2016 fee study that we had done, but we have not implemented, but we use some of those for the new fees going forward. As you adopt the resolution that does this, it does repeal all prior approvals, and the resolution will adopt the fees only. If we find anything where I've missed a little line or there's a typo or something in that, we'll go ahead and fix that. A guide to the new format. For the prior year column, it's labeled 2018-19 fee schedule, which means that there's only fees on there that were listed in last year's schedule. If we were collecting fees that were approved in prior schedules but had been left off of the current schedule, it shows as a double line or a longer line there to show that there was a fee, but it just wasn't in the last schedule. The 2019-20 fee is restated if it's the same as the prior year or if it's currently charged. And there's a gray box around any new or changed items for your reference. There's a column for additional references. In there it states either new or restructured, if it's new or restructured. If not, it has a resolution number that originally adopted it or increased it the last time, or a to be determined if we couldn't find the original resolution as of yet, that will be filled in at either a later time or after this fee schedule is adopted. And then the last column has the account number where the revenue is credited in the general ledger of the city. The changes. Across the board, we changed all the copy fees, went from 10 cents to 20 cents. Mass storage devices, they were listed as either CD or DVD or flash drive or whatever. We've tried to consolidate them all into a mass storage device and have the same prices throughout all departments. There's fees in here that are covered by different government codes or different sections of the government code that haven't been in the prior document, but we do charge them and we are authorized to charge them by other legislative bodies. but they are now in here as well. We have new fees in finance, public works, community services, and Mission Playhouse, and we have some restructured fees in community development, building, public works, and Mission Playhouse. For building, we're restructuring the building permit fees from 153 of the UBC, as shown in the 2018-19 fee schedule, to 140% of LA County fees, as recommended in the 2016 fee study, and the LA County fees are also used by neighboring cities. Same as the plan check fees, will be used in the LA County schedule. It lists most of the fees that were in Resolution 2002-03, and it includes the percent increases that have been adopted from years since then. It eliminates some fees for services that we no longer provide, like the CASP review, or provided an hourly rate and covered under a different fee title. And then here in this section, we have the informational only page for sample calculations. Public Works has a new program for banner hanging for non-city sponsored events. It does use labor and equipment for a private purpose. We have grading permits that are restructured to use LA County fee structure, a speed hump review program that the council has already looked at the speed hump program. This is just the fees that go along with that. And then the use of public right-of-way, a proposed restructure that breaks it down into a commercial event, a residential event, or all others. These do use city labor and equipment for private purpose, and the residential events are often require overtime costs, and there are some liability concerns with the closure of some streets. The impact fees, the sewer assessments, are provided as informational only. Mission Playhouse has restructured fees meant to encourage weekday rentals. Updated fees, they are market driven but still below market. We've eliminated obsolete equipment rentals, things we no longer have. Added labor and material costs for facility repair if something is damaged by people who are renting the facility. We've added a terms and condition deposit for clients whose previous rental history has breached our policies. And we've documented that city employees receive a discount of 40%, which also occurs in community services for the adult center and park facilities. And with that, I just open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you, Paula. This is a public hearing item, and I'll now open the public hearing portion of the item. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak regarding the fine presentation we've just seen from Paula Chamberlain? Wow. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion, and it's now the time for a council discussion. Any questions that we have first to clarify the presentation?
I just had a couple. Paula, thanks for this report. It's very concise, even though it's many pages, but it spells everything out very simplified, so I appreciate that. I did have a couple concerns about some new fees that we may be considering. One is banner hanging. My concern would be for nonprofits. I realize we don't allow commercial entities to hang banners, but I don't think it's fair that we place a fee on nonprofits. I don't know how my colleagues fare, but they have a hard enough time raising money just to do their events, and then to be placing a fee on them. So I'd like to have discussion more on that. It also has a fee for on-city poles. I didn't realize we had any city poles that we could hang banners. Oh, street, okay. I don't think I've ever seen a banner other than city banners on those. And then the other was curb painting. I don't know that, I know on my street, for my property, I'm just speaking on behalf of me, I've never had the city paint my curb number. It's always been a volunteer that has come into the city and offered to paint it for me, so, and that's been like the last 48 years. So let me know if I'm missing something or it's a service that certainly the city can provide.
Hello, Mayor and council members. I guess I'll address them in backwards order. For curb painting, it is a service that we do offer. You're welcome to have private entities do it, or whoever you used to hire. We have been historically charging $35, which is just not enough to go out there, prep the curb, put on a block, put on another color, and just the whole process. So it really is nothing more than an adjustment to an accurate cost. But we don't insist that the city do it. It's just an available service.
Okay. And usually the ones that come are vetted through the city. I think they have to get a permit or something to come within the city limits to do it. I don't know. That was my understanding, so I could be misinformed on that. And the other fee I had some concerns about was the closure of streets such as block parties. I again don't think that's a fee that we should impose on our citizens, our residents. I don't think we have enough block parties throughout the community each year that it would make that big of a difference. And I'm all about communities and blocks and residents and neighbors getting together and getting to know one another, and to impose a fee on them, I think there's some fees that we as a city need to absorb because we are a community, and I think we need to promote those types of events rather than imposing a fee on them where it would maybe deter them from having something of that. So those are my concerns. Otherwise, I think everything falls in line with what we should be doing.
Thank you, Councilmember Costanzo. Any other comments? Vice Mayor Machaca.
Okay. First of all, I really appreciate the fact that you're summarizing it. We're trying to recoup costs because, whether it's painting the curb or putting up banners, I understand that there is a cost. And so thank you for each of the departments to kind of taking charge and try to quantify it and letting us know as council, what it's involved, at least on a by quantity, by dollar-wise. But I, too, have the same concerns as Councilwoman Costanzo. The first one, I'll go backwards, I guess, I'll start with the neighborhood gatherings. I mean, that is just such an important part of our city. I mean, that's what makes our city, the fact that we know our neighbors. Not everybody can say that. And there aren't that many gatherings. I would like to see that waived in some way. I think it benefits the entire city, not just that one particular neighborhood where we actually know our neighbors and fosters a sense of community. So I think that's a cost that's not necessary. I asked our city manager what that would mean. I mean, how much do you think we would recover from it? And the number you gave me, I think, was like maybe at most 5,000 between that and the banner.
That would be correct. That's probably a conservative guess. It would likely be less than that in an annual year.
Okay, so the amounts are nominal. And so that was my first concern. And that one's a little easier. There's no gray area. Regarding the banners, well, first of all, with the nonprofits, especially the San Gabriel nonprofits, we're all struggling. We're all volunteers. We don't make a lot of money. It's not like $1 million nonprofits in this community. And so $250 is a lot of money. But I understand that aside from the nonprofits, the San Gabriel nonprofits, there are others that kind of fall in that gray area, whether it's from another city, having an event here, it's benefiting our community, but, where do we draw the line? So I think we may have to have a little bit more discussion on that to make it clear, so, there's no questions from, community members or even our staff, when should we be charging, when we shouldn't. So I think that area needs a little bit more thought, and it's just in the gray areas. I strong supporter of civic engagement, and I think this banner hanging is really one of the few ways that our nonprofits are really able to promote their events, and I think the city should always be part of that. So I would like us to have a little bit more discussion on the banner hanging. But aside from that, I think everything else seems to be in line with what was expected, the fact that it's all together. I just really appreciate that. So thank you for all the efforts.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Leal.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for such a detailed and comprehensive report. I just have a quick question. Page 3, adding a $2 fee to cover the cost of additional business license vehicle decals upon request. So can you explain to me what does that mean?
Some of the businesses that we have required to have a decal on their vehicle. Delivery trucks or food trucks, those type things, to show that they have a San Gabriel license, have a decal on their
I see.
vehicle.
Mhm.
And when they pay their license fee, we give them a decal. Sometimes they want more. So this is just an additional one, not the initial one.
Right, so it's only $2. It's not a,
Right.
yeah,
It's just
not
to
a big
recover
deal.
our cost for the additional.
But my question actually is, remember, I guess about a couple of months ago, I was trying to help the 2020 census. So I was going to put my card wrap around with the advertisement. So do I need a business license from the city, and how much would that be?
I don't know. I will have to look that up and get back with you.
Okay, all right, that's good enough. Another simple question is for Mission Playhouse. Because Mission Playhouse is usually all booked over the weekends, but not during the weeknights or weekdays. So we're trying to encourage people to use the Playhouse for lower rate. But the new rate shows $12.50 now, and reduced about $300. Still, I don't think it's enough, because any shows that with 8 hours, that becomes like 6,000 or more. So still very expensive. And over the weekend, actually, we increased $500, from $2,200 to $2,700. Weekends maybe not a problem, but still, I hear a lot of complaints. Any shows at the Playhouse is going to cost $10,000, and so they compare a cheaper venue. But we have the most prestige theater in San Gabriel Valley, so I guess for weekends it's okay. But for the purpose, we try to bring in shows and performances during the weeknights or weekdays. Maybe we have to reconsider the rate, maybe much lower than that. So
The department did take a look at all these rates, and these are the ones that they recommended, and wanted to remind the council that the general fund still does subsidize for the operation of this, so cutting the fees even more would require a higher subsidy by the general fund.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember, anything? Okay. I think I agree with my colleagues about some of the concerns regarding the banner hanging fee. If maybe it can be specified on the fee schedule that a waiver for nonprofits that are either located in San Gabriel and I would say, or for an event that substantially benefits the San Gabriel community, that a waiver would be available for those types of events. And if we need to separately further refine, I guess that sort of the precision of that policy, I get we could, but I'll ask staff to go back and look at our current existing banner policy and whether or not it's workable or just maybe need some tweaking to be able to provide enough guidance, as to what types of banners would be eligible for a fee waiver and which ones, would not. So I support that, and I also support, not charging a fee for block parties, street closures for residential events. I think that that is part of San Gabriel's tradition, and even though we do National Night Out in a centralized way, these days, many people do still want to have their own block parties, and I think that is a really hallmark, unique aspect of the San Gabriel community, and to have to pay, I guess, $250 just for the street closure fee, I think, I think people would be upset by that, and also it would basically just squash those block parties, which are a good thing. Okay. So I think maybe with those two amendments to the fee schedule, Is there a motion to approve?
Okay. Motion to approve.
Okay. Okay, motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Introduction and first reading of an ordinance amending Title 11, Section 110 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code, Business Licenses. Presentation will be made by Management Specialist and Acting Finance Director Paula Chamberlain.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you amends the current business license code in a couple of ways. First, it exempts entertainers located outside city limits hired by the city for city-sponsored events, and also exempts recreation program and individual instructors, coaches, and/or referees from paying business license tax. Secondly, it provides a prorated license fee for vendors located outside the city that are selling food, services, and/or merchandise at city-sponsored events. Staff also recommends that these temporary vendors be exempt from paying the automation surcharge and application fee. In both cases here, they come in and they're here just for a short time. When we hire them, sometimes they want to charge us back for their license fees, so it's kind of a wash. This would streamline the process and provide a better experience for everybody coming through and get our special events handled more efficiently. The third change is that it corrects amounts on certain business license categories within the current municipal code back to the amounts that were approved in 1992. And please note that there was a correction to section 110.65, which should read $45 plus $6 per rental accommodations over 4 years, rather than just the $6 per rental, and I believe that's on the dais for you. It should also be noted that under Prop 218, approved by California voters in 1996, business license fees are considered taxes and require voter approval to be increased. Voter approval is not required to reduce the tax, but once it's reduced, it cannot be increased or reinstated without additional voter approval. And that completes my report.
Thank you again, Paula. This is a public hearing item, and I will open the public hearing portion. If any member of the public would like to speak to us about this issue, please do so now or forever hold your peace. I mean, none of you are here for business licenses and city fees. Okay, no, I'm just joking. All right, I will close the public hearing portion, seeing no members of the public wishing to speak. Council discussion, comments, questions? Yes, Councilmember Harrington.
I just had one question, and maybe for Keith. If we do a waiver, is that the same as a reduction, the same legal effect? So we have to waive it forever? Because we are talking about a waiver, not a reduction. For the temporary businesses that we sponsor events.
In other words, we waive some.
So we're waiving, like Paul explained, we're waiving when we have an event.
Right.
So we're bringing them in for a particular event. We're waiving. So let's say 5 years from now we don't want to do that anymore. Would we have to go to the voters to not waive anymore? Or is that a practice? Or is that actually a reduction in fees?
I guess that would be a reduction in fee, and therefore you wouldn't have to go to the voters. But the question I would have is just to make sure
stop
that
waiving it in the future. Would we have to go to the voters now and say we no longer want to waive these fees?
Well, is the waiver 100% across the board or only for certain types?
It's only for certain types. It's
right?
for the people that are at a city-sponsored event only.
So
hired by the city for the special event.
It does not require us to go to the voters if you reduce a fee. I don't know if I've seen a case on this specific question, but it seems logical to me that if you don't have to go for a permanent reduction, then you don't have to go for the temporary reduction. So that part of it's fine. And the question you've got is once you stop reducing, is that an increase? And I think the answer is probably no, because the fee is still on the books as the fee. We just would have to make sure that if we're doing that
just a policy that we're waiving it for events.
Well, you can stop. In other words, we're deciding not to charge a fee for a certain period of time, but the fee's still on the books, and I think the decision not to charge the fee does not require you to go back for permission.
So then we're not encoding this into the business license, or we are?
It is in the business license code, but it's an exemption from the fee. So the fee is still there, but it's an exemption to the fee.
Okay. I didn't know the legal effect of that, if it's permanent. That's the long and short. Is that a permanent exemption?
Yeah, you know what, if it's written into it, I guess I don't know the answer to the question.
Okay. That's just something I wanted to know.
I would ask to come
so
back on that.
We're kind of binding the hands of future councils if that's the case. So I mean, it's fine. It's a decision we're making, but we should know that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that offhand.
If it pleases the council, we can bring that back between first and second reading, and we can have that information in the report for the second reading.
Perfect. That's good.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. That's it.
All right. Other members of the council? Councilmember Leal?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, a very simple question regarding the renting units. So classification R for 4 or more rental units is $6 per rental, right?
It's
unit.
$45 for the fourth rental, and then $6 for every rental after that.
Okay, that's fair enough, but not to exceed total license fee of $450. So in case if there's 1,000 units, I guess if it's counted by number, will be what, $6,000. But now we only charge $450.
Correct.
Is that fair? If it's a big complex?
That's how the code is written now, and you can't change it unless you go to the voters.
Okay, thank you.
We're not changing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Other members? Anything? Okay. I think I'd just like to weigh in briefly on the issue that Councilmember Harrington brought up, because for those specific kinds of vendors, it's not I don't read the ordinance as saying that it's a waiver. It's really a proration. It's a proration of the fee for that quarter, the calendar quarter in which that event is taking place. So I don't know if that affects the legal analysis or not, but I would, having an analysis done and brought back would be fine. So there we go. And I know that first that business license issue for just vendors that come in for one day for some of our award-winning events like Dumplings and Beer or some of the Summer Night series or things like that, Lunar New Year, it creates kind of a hassle, and I'm glad we're including this proration so that it's not so onerous. We're actually inviting and hiring them to come to provide entertainment or to sell goods and services at our events. So I think it's even if we were tying future council's hands, it'd be fine with me because it's only fair. I think we shouldn't require those types of vendors to have to buy a full year's business license just to come for one day at our request. So is there a motion?
Okay. Motion to approve.
Motion second.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, for clarification, does that include the changes to 110.65 that were presented on the dais?
I'm sorry, the changes that
we provided a revised resolution with the clarification to match what the code states.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
That was my understanding anyway.
So, yep. So motion was changes and modifications.
Okay. So for clarification and the record, the motion is to approve the recommended action with the changes presented on the dais. Isn't this second still stand as well? Okay. Motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. It's our night of public hearings. Not quite as fun as a night at the opera, but
some might say more fun.
For us municipal nerds, it's more fun.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, may I read the title of that ordinance for the record?
Yes, please.
Ordinance number 654, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Gabriel, California, amending Chapter 110 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code regarding general business licenses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Item C, zone text amendment to update the San Gabriel Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units, ZTA 19-001. Presentation will be made by Assistant Planner Anthony Alvarado.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Anthony Alvarado. I'm the Assistant Planner in the Planning Division. The public hearing item before you tonight is for a cleanup zone text amendment for the San Gabriel Municipal Code as it pertains to the development of accessory dwelling units, also known as ADUs. In 2016 to 2017, the state of California amended Government Code Section 65852.2 to facilitate the development of accessory dwelling units. Local municipalities were given the option to either choose not to adopt the ordinance, which would make them subject to state standards, or adopt its own ordinance in order to tailor the requirements to the existing development patterns found in their city. On June 19, 2018, the City Council approved case number ZTA 17-002, which adopted ordinance number 644-CS relating to the development of ADUs. Since adoption of this ordinance, there have been a number of 43 ADU applications submitted to Planning Division, and of those, 21 have been approved and allowed to proceed to the building plant check process. Over the past year, staff has received questions and inquiries regarding some of this language in the code. This proposed ZTA would address the questions that staff has encountered most frequently over the past year. In summary, the proposed ZTA would make changes to the following. First is to delete previous language relating to second residential units and senior housing unit sections in the San Gabriel Municipal Code. Provide clarification for current ADU language, and also add a requirement for a covenant to be filed with future ADU applications. The City Council originally considered the proposed ZTA at the September 3rd City Council meeting. At the meeting, City Council requested additional information relating to the determination of which elements of the ADU would count towards FAR and lot coverage, as well as clarification on ADUs in multifamily zone properties. It was ruled that the proposed ZTA would be continued to the September 17th City Council meeting. As mentioned, the first step of the ZTA is the deletion of previous sections. The city proposed to eliminate second residential units and senior housing units in the San Gabriel Municipal Code. The ADU language provides a more flexible way of obtaining these second units. However, there are still references to both terms in the San Gabriel Municipal Code that were overlooked when this ordinance was originally adopted. The proposed ZTA would delete and or modify these outdated references. The second is to provide further clarification of current ADU language. The maximum ADU size prescribed in the San Gabriel Municipal Code is 50% of the primary dwelling unit up to 800 square feet. This was done to ensure that the ADU remains accessory to the primary unit. Elements such as permanently covered porches and patios can not only add to a building's footprint, but could potentially be converted into habitable space in the future. Also, based on state law, cities can only require one additional parking space on a lot for an ADU. However, this requirement may be met as either being covered, uncovered, with a mechanical automobile parking lift, or tandem on an existing driveway. An ADU garage is therefore not considered required parking in the city, and thus should be restricted to a maximum size of 200 square feet according to section 153.031 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code. If the ADU is attached to the garage would count towards that maximum ADU square footage size. And I have provided on this slide a revised image detailing 3 different scenarios It is important to note that in each of these scenarios, it is assuming that the maximum ADU size allowed is 800 square feet. First scenario is if we have an ADU size of 800 square feet with a detached garage for the ADU, maximum size of that being 200 square feet, with a 6-foot separation for all structures. It is also important to note that the ADU garage would count towards lot coverage and FAR in all three of these. The second option is if you have a garage attached to an ADU, the 200 square foot garage would count as part of that 800 square foot maximum allowance. And the same would be with an ADU porch/patio. And third part of the ZTA is a recordation of a covenant. The San Gabriel Municipal Code currently requires that either the primary unit or the ADU is owner occupied. However, we do not have a requirement to have a covenant filed in order to ensure this. Based on city's previous second residential unit language, a covenant used to be required for second residential unit applications. The covenant required is not something new for second residential residences. It would be required to state the following. Either the primary unit or the ADU is owner occupied. The ADU may not be sold separately from the primary unit. And the unit that is not occupied by the owner may not be rented out for a term of less than 30 days. Planning staff has determined that the amendment would be compatible with San Gabriel's general plan based on land use goal 1.3 and community design goal 10.3. Staff has determined that the proposed amendment would be exempt from the CEQA guidelines under section 15282H. The section exempts adoption of an ordinance regarding second units in a residential zone to implement the provisions of the government code. On August 12, 2019, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the proposed zone text amendment to the City Council with a vote of 4-0. The language in the ZTA is intended to provide clarification. It would not cause development to occur. The proposed ZTA is not anticipated to have an impact on the city's revenue fund. The changes made by this ordinance shall apply to any application that is deemed complete on or after 31 days after the passage. And to that end, staff is recommending that the City Council conduct the 4 following actions for the zone text amendment. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Mr. Mayor, may I add one comment, please?
Absolutely.
So the entire council yesterday received a letter from a nonprofit called Californians for Housing, and that letter suggested to the council that as of last week, the state had passed 3 bills that affect ADUs and the way that the codes reflect how those can be adopted or regulated by cities. The person who wrote the letter suggested that we not go forward with this tonight because if the governor signs those bills, then we would be back to amending the code once again. My suggestion would be to move forward with this because we will be getting applications over the next 6 months. If the governor does enact those bills, we can come back and make changes to the code related to whatever those bills make changes to. But in the meantime, waiting doesn't do a whole lot for us since the work has already been done.
Thank you, Mark. I was going to provide the same sort of comments at the beginning of council discussion, but yes, that'll be a threshold question we should probably discuss during council discussion as to whether or not to move forward at this time with what we've got. And with the anticipation that it's possible we would have to come back and amend certain portions of the ZTA here would conflict with what's sitting on Governor Newsom's desk right now. So it'd be likely that there would be some amendments that would be required as of January 1st, 2020. But in any case, this is a public hearing, and so I'll open the public hearing portion of this item. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the City Council regarding this issue? Yes, ma'am. Oh, please come forward. Yeah, Debbie Kilgore. I'm so excited.
Well, I do watch the videos. I love having the videos. Instead of coming here, you can sit down and listen to the videos. You can replay them, so I really appreciate that.
Great.
I don't know not much about the ADUs because that's a new project, but if your neighbor is building an ADU, or how do people know that their neighbor is building that? Do we have...
Tracy, would you provide a response?
Good evening, Tracy Steinkruger with the Community Development Department. The answer is 9 times out of 10 you won't until construction is underway. That's because when the ADU ordinance or the legislation was passed by the state, they made sure that ADUs were expedited as much as possible. We cannot require discretion. It's a ministerial process. All that really needs to be done is planning sign off, and it moves forward to building plan check. Nine times out of 10, you're just not going to know until you see something pop up in your neighbor's yard.
Does current state law prohibit noticing requirements?
It doesn't prohibit noticing requirements or allowing someone to require that a building permit is on file or that construction would occur, but we can't subject it to a discretionary process.
Okay, thank you.
But I still have questions, though. If you're
Sure.
building this unit and they're building a garage and you've got parking, and very seldom do you have a single person with a single car living in a one-bedroom or studio apartments today. So that means all of a sudden your neighbor is 6 feet from your fence is building a unit where people are going to be living, and we know that just unless it's your parent or something like that, it's not one person there, and you've got parking to deal with, noise issues. And how do you even approach the city and say, you're building this unit, just like we can do with apartments or condominiums, we can approach and talk about that unit that's being built there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a real big concern about units. They're pop up and they're there, and who they put in it, whether it's themselves or they bring in a new family, that's a concern about the neighborhood it's coming to. I'm not saying it can't be built, but I think that if you're building those units, we should have the neighbors, just like you send out notices to us when something's going on, that we really should have some information that's going on, because you get it and all of a sudden you have a lot of people living in a ADU. That can be a concerning issue for your neighborhood safety and many other things. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Kilgore. I understand your concerns. I guess for general information, the direction of the state law is going towards more permissiveness regarding ADUs as a means of, I believe it's one of the bills is called the Housing Crisis Bill, something along those lines. So part of all of these policy initiatives is to try to address the availability of housing. And you'd be correct that in some cases that means densification. And one bill that all the cities fought last year was a bill that would have essentially eliminated R1 zoning by allowing up to 4 units on any lot. And that one was shelved to be a 2-year bill, and hopefully that won't come back, but it's still possible. Our ordinance is designed to comply with state law, and as you can see, there's many people who have actually applied for it already. So we need to just provide good guidance, direction to staff to make sure. I think one addition that we specifically added from the last time we did this public hearing was specifically saying that ADU garages would count towards the FAR and lot coverage maximums, which means that in the end it means that has a tendency to limit how much more somebody could build, or how much square footage they could occupy on their current lot for an ADU and the garage. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Now is the time for council discussion and questions. Anyone? Councilmember Leal.
Thank you, Mayor. So regarding these three bills, what's their status right now? Are they, passing the appropriation, waiting for a governor to sign, or what?
They're sitting on the governor's desk waiting for a signature or a veto.
So it looks like they are going to be passed, right? This.
To be determined. I was actually up at the California American Planning Association conference the past couple of days, and one of the items that's on the agenda every year is the League's update.
Mm-hmm.
The League took a position of strong opposition to all three bills unless they were amended. In the presentation that I was privy to, the League is still optimistic that not all of these will move forward, possibly one of the three. But again, they took a very firm stance because so many cities have gone through the process of either adopting the template that was provided by the state or went through a very rigorous process of tailoring the ADU ordinance to their communities and are now, I think, very frustrated at the idea of potentially having to go back and reopen that ordinance and all the subsequent community engagement that's involved. In a lot of jurisdictions, present company included, that process took about 8 months, cradle to grave. So the idea of having to revisit that so soon after the initial state legislation was passed, also taking into consideration that some cities haven't seen a lot of ADU applications, I think by all parties in the room today was seen as being quite premature. But we'll see what the governor ends up doing.
All right, so according to our city manager, he decided to go ahead with this, but do you expect a lot of changes after these three, well, just in case two bills pass?
I think the answer is we don't know yet, but in the meantime, we still have applications for ADUs coming in the door, and our goal, first and foremost, is to provide as much transparency as possible about the process and what the rules and regulations are that apply to ADUs. Make sure we provide it in a very clear manner that's easy to understand, because this is certainly not a simple topic. And then also make the public aware that if something is signed by the governor, that we may have to go revisit the ordinance in the future. So at the end of the day, it's just all about making sure the public is well informed and understands the process.
Thank you. And as a matter of fact, I think LA encouraging homeowners to build ADU and rent it to homeless people, and they will subsidize, if they take care of the homeless population. But that's not my point. My point is with garages, because we don't count garages as the whole living area, right? For instance, with ADU or without ADU. Okay, so now with ADU with garage, and we have to count that. We have to report to county assessor and say that additional garage area has to be taxed. That doesn't seem right because we never been taxed for garages. So now with ADU, we have to include that.
Ultimately, property owners have to make a decision. If they're going to take a space and transition it from non-habitable to habitable space, that is going to have an impact on the taxes that they're assessed. Just like when someone chooses to build a pool or a pool house or a rec room or an office in the back, that also factors into how their property tax is assessed. Ultimately, that's a decision that only the homeowner can make when they come to the planning division to ask questions about how they develop the property. We focus on the zoning code and any process that it may be subject to. Decisions about financing of a property are entirely up to the property owner.
Thank you. And I just want to correct the comment that I made, last meeting regarding it has nothing to do with our city, but with the city of Rosemead. Anything over 6,000, and they have additional 6,000 lot, they can build 2 homes on R1 zone. So that's their building ordinance, but not in San Gabriel. So, but I just want to clarify, if the lot is big enough, and as a matter of fact, has to be wide enough so they can have a driveway next to the home. So, thank you.
Can I clarify part of that discussion? Because an ADU garage would not necessarily count as habitable space. Or let me phrase it a different way. If we, just because we count it towards FAR and lot coverage does not necessarily mean it would be counted for purposes of assessment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I fully agree with, I thank you for your response that, obviously if you're going to build additional habitable space on your lot, then yes, your lot will be reassessed per that habitable space. But the garage space by itself, just because we count it for FAR purposes, doesn't necessarily factor into that reassessment. And other thing too, I wanted to clarify. Can you remind us what is the governor's deadline for his approval or veto? Is it? I think it's October 13th or something like that.
I was going to say October 13th or 15th, but please don't quote me on it because that was the one thing I wasn't paying attention to in all this.
Something in that neighborhood. So we'll know soon enough if we, what changes we may need to make, or if we need to make any changes. Well, actually, let me take a step back and poll the council and see if because there are portions of these the zone text amendment which I think are good clarifications, particularly what we were just talking about regarding FAR and lot coverage, which to my knowledge would not be affected at all by any of the bills that are currently on the governor's desk. So to that extent, we've already put in the work to do it. One of the things that could potentially be amended, I think, is we require that the lot be owner occupied, and one of the bills prohibits that kind of a requirement. And I think there's something maybe about the recordation as well. Like it would not. So we might have to strike some of the requirements that we currently have if some of those bills are ultimately signed by the governor. But in the meantime, I think I tend to agree with staff and with our city manager that implementing these regulations, this ordinance now, then allows us to be able to, at least for some period of time, have some clarification regarding the ADUs in San Gabriel. And there are portions of what we're doing here which I think would stand regardless of which bills this governor signs, which ones he doesn't, so forth and so on. Councilmember Harrington?
Yeah, and I would go as far as to say I disagree with the way the author of that email wrote it, saying that the entire ordinance would be nullified. If you read the bills, they don't nullify the ordinance, they nullify the portions that are in contradiction to the new bills.
Right.
So if we do something now and take action and it happens to, the bill says, well, you can't require owner occupancy, they don't kick out our whole ADU, they kick out the portions that are not in compliance. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just clarification, so if the governor signs or he decides to go through some amendments, because I think this is an issue that's very fluid, anything could happen from now to October 15th, this would take effect January 1st, or do we have time to understand the changes? And so we do have more time than just January 1st, or is that, I wasn't clear about that.
I understand. Tracy, please.
I was going to say, it sounds, based on what we heard today, it sounds like it'll take effect on or around January 1st. We may have a grace period allotted to us. What happened with the original ADU legislation was, I think within about 60 days of the legislation being signed, we basically got a primer from Housing and Community Development as to this is what you guys need to do moving forward to make sure that your ordinance is up to par and that your zoning code is consistent with what was passed. I think if any of these bills are signed, we'll probably get something similar to that in relative short order, and work with the city attorney's office to make whatever modifications we need to make sure we're on the up and up.
So it could be 6 months, maybe 8 months. Meanwhile, we're still getting applications, so we do need to have something in play.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments? It sounds to me like there's consensus that we move forward. Any comments, changes to the ordinance, or other questions clarifying? We've already been through this once, so I want to thank staff for being responsive to our comments and incorporating the changes that we've requested already. Is there a motion to approve the recommended action?
I'll make the motion.
I'll motion by Vice Mayor Menchaca and second by Councilmember Leal. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. Next item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6A, new business. Wildlife management issues. Presentation will be made by Assistant City Manager and Community Development Director Armine Shaparian.
Good evening.
Good evening. Actually waiting for my presentation to pop up.
I think you're our star for tonight.
Showtime, just kidding. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I am here this evening to present on an issue that's actually not new to our city. More or less, it's actually an update to let you know where we are and what the issue looks like at this time. And it's really intended to provide you with information regarding the current state of wildlife management in our community. It was actually about a year ago that this item was in front of you for discussion as we updated the city's coyote management plan. And in an effort to update the plan, we also held a thorough presentation provided by Rebecca Dimitri, which was intended to be an educational session for our community in providing them with tools and resources. And in the last year, between June of 2018 and June of 2019, we've actually continued to track the issue, and we've monitored the calls for service that have come in to the police department. And it looks like we've received 31 calls for service from residents regarding encounters or issues they've had in relation to wildlife management in our city. Since this issue is actually not only an issue in the city of San Gabriel, but it's actually a regional issue, there has been an increase in coyote encounters in the entire San Gabriel Valley and a lot of cities around us. Hence why the San Gabriel Council of Governments actually looked on a regional approach to providing some resources and outreach for the community, and formed the Coyote Management Task Force, which the city of San Gabriel was invited to partake in, and we've attended regular meetings and discussed the issue on a regional basis. The task force was developed to look at creating a framework that member agencies can select to participate and be a part of. And as a result, the Coyote Management Implementation Plan was completed, which offers various services that we're going to discuss tonight. And we do have representatives from the COG with us this evening who will be available later on to answer any specific questions. The Memorandum of Agreement, which is a part of your staff report tonight, was actually drafted by the Council of Governments. And for cities to participate in the Coyote Management Services Plan, the COG is asking for cities to enter into this. Actually, let me just make sure I'm on the. Here we go. The COG is asking for cities to consider the MOA. And to date, the cities of Alhambra, Arcadia, Azusa, Covina, El Monte, Glendora, Irwindale, Montebello, San Dimas, San Marino, Temple C, and Walnut have expressed interest and are considering. And actually, last week, San Marino and Irwindale unanimously approved their memorandums of agreement to participate in this regional framework. If our city council was to consider this agreement, the services would actually commence from November of this year, and it will be for a 2-year term at a $10,000 a year cost for 2 years. There are specific services that will be provided should the city decide to enter into the MOA. Specifically, it really would provide a much more regional approach in providing information, holding town hall meetings for our community outreach. It will include an 800 line, greater reporting mechanisms. It would provide information for the website. It would really encourage the incident reporting capability for all of the residents to participate in, because the more information we have, the better understanding we'll have of where we're having these encounters in our community. And these are a number of services that currently we really can do at a minimal level because of capacity issues when it comes to staffing. There have been cities that have actually considered adding additional staff to be able to do this level of outreach in the community. As for what would the city be on the hook for, the city would continue providing a point of contact for the COG. We would participate in the coordination calls and the meetings. We would pay for the services. We really would be a mediator between our community and the regional framework. We would continue attending the events. Most recently, we have had 2 incidents in our community in the last few weeks where we have actually reached out to the COG and asked them to help us, especially with contacting a lot of outside agencies. As part of our staff report this evening, we did provide some alternatives for the City Council to consider. As I mentioned earlier, this is not a new issue in the city or in our region, and we have continued to provide ongoing education and outreach in our city. One of the first alternatives we've offered is really not to change what we're already doing, with the exception of adding additional signage in certain neighborhoods where there are greater levels of encounters that we're hearing about. There's a sample of the poster as part of your agenda packet this evening. If council authorizes us to do this, we would actually go ahead and make those signs available in the city's public right-of-way and strategically install them in neighborhoods where we are hearing that there are greater numbers of encounters happening. A second alternative for the City Council to consider includes trapping services. And as part of this alternative, should the council consider it, we would actually solicit bids from coyote trappers and create a short list of qualified vendors that will be available to assist the city and the residents. As I mentioned earlier, there were 2 recent incidents in the city where trapping services may have been an alternative to consider. As part of this option, we would release a request for proposal and solicit bids. We have looked at what this cost would entail, and it's really all over the place. It ranges anywhere from $600 per trapping to all the way up to $3,000 per trapping. And there are vendors out there that are providing this service. And once trapped, depending on the physical condition of the coyote, it is either rehabbed and released into a natural habitat or it's euthanized. And if the council wants to consider this as an alternative, like I mentioned earlier, we would have to go out and release an RFQ and solicit bids and bring that information back to the City Council. Lastly, the third alternative we've included in your staff report this evening involves expanding our current program to include identifying hazing materials that the city may be able to purchase and actually have available at City Hall should residents want to come and obtain the materials. We've heard of cities such as San Dimas who's offering whistles for residents. So if residents want to, they're able to come to City Hall and get a free whistle and use it as part of their hazing methods. We've heard of another city that's providing wolf urine. Predator urine is meant to be a deterrent. Now, some of these options I'm mentioning, these are things that residents could do now on their own. I actually went on Amazon and looked to see what hazing materials are available or predator urine. So if any resident at this time wants to pursue these options on their own, they certainly can. As far as does the predator urine really work, I've read quite a bit of literature on this subject, and I think opinions range. It seems to help to be a deterrent. Some residents have used it around the perimeter of their home, especially kind of their entryways and in their backyards. And some folks say it's supposed to work wonders. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it yet, but it's. I think the opinions are kind of across the board. And it's actually synthetic wolf urine. And if that's an option council wants to consider as far as the city providing free samples to residents, we would have to get some numbers and come back with an estimate. There are some other issues to consider as part of kind of the bigger issues at play. As far as generally a public entity is liable for injury caused by a dangerous condition of its property if the plaintiff establishes that the property was in a dangerous condition at the time of the injury, that the injury was approximately caused by the dangerous condition. However, the City of San Gabriel as a public entity is not liable to a person using public property for an injury caused by a natural condition on any unimproved public property. And the California codes have found that wild animals are a natural part of the condition of unimproved public property, and that public agencies may not be held liable for injuries caused by wild animals that travel from unimproved or improved areas such as parks, streets, civic centers, etc. Therefore, the city is not liable for people that are bitten or injured by coyotes on public property. This is a comment we're addressing because we've had some concerns raised by residents. The City of San Gabriel's ability to go onto private property stems from the city's general policy powers and is essentially the same as with other police matters. Generally, any law enforcement officer must have a warrant to enter your home and property unless there are exigent circumstances involved. Exigent circumstances are those conditions that necessitate immediate action by law enforcement officials, such as if the coyote possesses an immediate or imminent threat. These situations are circumstantial and must be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And given the amount of effort and research staff has done, it really, when it comes to coyote management as a whole, it really depends on the situation. One of the incidents we had most recently, there was an injured coyote in the neighborhood. In order for that coyote to be captured in some way, it had to be stationary. Well, the coyote kept moving. We reached out to several agencies, and the challenge was, first and foremost, finding where the injured coyote actually was. At the end, it just happened that this particular coyote got stuck between the residence fence and the wall. Hence, Humane Society officers were able to go out and capture the coyote. So really, there are so many different situations that could arise. We had another incident where we heard that there were a number of, there was a coyote with its pups under a resident's home. We had several individuals, officers, go out and look at the situation. We actually could not identify where the coyote and the pups were located. So depending on the situation, and earlier in my presentation I mentioned private property owners have a lot of leeway in what they can do when it comes to coyotes. As far as hazing is concerned, there are a number of methods. We have provided that information to the community. It's available on the city's website. We are urging residents to use our website as a mechanism for reporting the encounters they're having, certainly contacting staff so we have a better sense of where we're seeing the encounters and the incidents. And as I mentioned earlier, this issue is not unique to the city of San Gabriel. This is something that's happening throughout California, actually. The recommendation for council this evening is really to look at the issue holistically, look at some of the options that have been provided by staff, and provide direction for us to proceed, should you wish to consider any of the alternatives we've provided. Specifically for the memorandum of agreement, should the council approve for the city to move forward in participating as part of the Council of Governments regional framework, we would seek council's authorization for $10,000 to be transferred from the general fund contingency account to pay for immediate implementation. And if this was an act that the council should wish to take, staff would actually not only actively participate with the COG, but as we would in any instance, we would continue monitoring the calls we're receiving as the police department already does. And most recently, really looking for ways to be more engaged with our residents and trying to understand where the encounters are happening and how we can provide good information for our residents. That concludes my presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we do have staff members here from the COG to help answer any specific questions you may have related to the MOA. And joining me is Joe Chen from Building, since he and I have become the in-house experts on I think, fielding the issue. And we also have Chief Harris available to answer specific questions in relation to how the police department handles the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Armene. We do have some speakers' request cards for this specific item. First up is Andrea Farraco from the COG. Hi, Andrea.
Good evening. Hello, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. I'm Andrea Farraco. I'm an unofficial resident representing the COG. I am a private citizen. I do not work for the COG. But I'm here as a resident of the San Gabriel Valley, and I am concerned about the coyote program. But I'm here to encourage the City of San Gabriel to adopt the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments' new Regional Coyote Management Framework Project, also known as RCMF, that was just spoken about. It was just created in July 2019. The budget is $10,000 annually, and I am asking you to please approve the MOA for this purpose. Why? Because this task force has studied the coyote issue, and as a result, the Regional Coyote Management Framework was created. It is a program that has developed a best practice documentation for handling coyotes at this time. It includes, as was spoken about, coyote management strategies, reporting tools, public education recommendations, and other resources to reduce the human-coyote conflicts. It was based upon these principles. Human safety is a priority to managing human-coyote interactions. Coyotes serve as an important role in San Gabriel Valley's ecosystem by helping to control rodent populations, but we do know there's an overpopulation of coyotes. So, preventative practices are crucial to minimizing potential interactions and encounters with coyotes. This region-wide program that involves residents can improve coexistence among humans, coyotes, and our pets. Coyotes do not understand city boundaries. Therefore, the regional program is the way we should approach this. So I'm encouraging you to vote positively for the MOA. Currently, the cities of Alhambra, Arcadia, Azusa, Covina, El Monte, Glendora, Irwindale, Montebello, San Marino, San Dimas, Temple City, and Walnut have agreed to this and have been implementing this in November 2019. And I'm encouraging you, the City of San Gabriel, to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fracco. Next, we have Annie Luck.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor and City Council. Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to have the chance to speak. I really appreciate your time tonight. My name is Annie Luck. I have been a resident at San Gabriel for 19 years. I am deeply concerned with the coyotes in our neighborhood. On August 12th, a coyote was in front of my house. Today, I brought 2 photos of the coyote that was in front of my house. This is my husband who's assisting me. I wanted to share how I am saddened to see how this coyote looks. It is ill and not well. It pains me to see a coyote looking like this, and yet we are not doing anything. The coyote does not know what is wrong, but we know. And we need to find ways to help them, treat them, bring them to places that can be treated, and bring them to places so they can be safe, living not in an urban community in San Gabriel, but a safe place for them. Because I fear that there will be many more of them like this, not well in the near future. Therefore, may I ask for your help to help them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Luck. Last speaker's request card is Doug Richter.
Mayor, City Council, and Keith and Mark. I guess the first question, well, first of all, my name's Doug Richter, 620 Montecito Drive in San Gabriel. I've seen 1 coyote in my neighborhood in 40 years that I've lived here, and that's it. Whether it was good or bad, I don't know. Okay, my question to Mark and Keith is, Armin brought up the topic that trapped coyotes would be, if possible, rehabbed and released into the natural habitat or euthanized. Yet, when I go back, that was on page 5 of your report. When I go back to page 4, the alternate method that other cities have been using, all have been lethal removal. And I noticed under City of Pasadena, it says coyotes are not allowed to be relocated, state law, so all trapped coyotes will be humanly euthanized. My question is, what can we do? Can we relocate them, or do we have to kill them if we trap them?
Thank you, Mr. Richter.
Mr. Richter, unfortunately, the answer to that question is that if a coyote is trapped in the state of California, it must be either released in the exact location or euthanized. The instance that Ms. Japarian was talking about was we had a specific coyote that was injured, And if there is a coyote that is injured and brought to like a wildlife way station or a wildlife rehabilitation center, there are centers that do take those coyotes and rehabilitate them and take them out and release them in the wild. Or if they are so sick and there isn't care for them, then they're euthanized at the facility. So only under very, very specific circumstances are coyotes trapped or taken and not euthanized. So if we are talking about what happens when a coyote is trapped, 99 times out of 100, that coyote is euthanized.
Okay, then, well, either whether euthanized or returned. One of your alternatives, like I said, was to trap them, and the cost we entered anywhere from $600 to $3,000, if I heard it right. And yet, when the report that I have here in front of me is your own coyote management report from last year. And one of the topics that they do say is that when a coyote is dispersed for any reason, it will return to its territory or go someplace else. It could affect other people. But even if that coyote doesn't return, it states here in your report on page 6, removing a group of territorial coyotes will create an undefended area into which the transient coyotes will flow. At all times of the year, numbers of transients are immediately available to replenish any voids by killing the resident coyotes or trapping them. So my question here is why isn't this alternate even on the agenda? To me, it should be removed because you're going to trap a coyote, either kill him or take him, relocate him somewhere. Another one's going to fill its place. You're going to just spend more money to trap the next one. He gets killed. Another one comes in, and this is a continuing expense to the city.
The reason, sir, that that's in the agenda or that's in the staff report is because we try and provide a balanced approach to providing information to the council and the community. There are cities that take that approach. Torrance just approved about a $70,000 budget to do a wholesale trapping program. So I don't think that we as staff would be doing our jobs if we didn't present that information to the council. But there certainly are experts who say exactly what you've said, that does not help the problem. So it's up to us as a community and as a city council, the council that's up here, to decide on what's right for our community.
Well, there's no cost listed under this alternate, so that's why I questioned it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richter. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to the city council regarding this issue? Yes, sir. And Mr. Myers, could you fill out a speaker's request card after you're done?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I've lived in the city a few years, as you all know, and I walk my dogs, 2 dachshunds, every day, maximum of 5 miles, minimum of 3 miles. And people that have lived here, well, I've seen many, in the recent past, I've seen quite a few coyotes. And I've been, haven't engaged, but I've gotten rid of them, not by shooting them or anything, but by getting them out of the area. Because I do carry protective stuff, and I'm prepared to use it. It's a baseball bat. People think I'm crazy, really. I have a whistle, a baseball bat, and I have a bear spray, and I also have mustard spray, depending on how many coyotes you're dealing with. But, and I'm prepared to use them, and I have. I've used a couple of the items that I just named off, fending off coyotes. I mean, they weren't coming at me and attacking me, but they do come at you, and the more they have in their pack, the more aggressive they are, and that's a fact. So it's a problem, and it can be. I mean, there are cures, there are remedies, and I think we should take a serious look at it and see what we can do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Myers. Anybody else who would like to address the council? I'll close the sort of public comment portion for this item and move on to council discussion. Okay, public comment for this item is closed. Council discussion, questions? Anybody like to start? Oh, and let me first actually acknowledge Navneet Kaur and Mr. Alex, who are actually staff members from the COG. I assume you're here to be able to answer any questions regarding the COG approach and MOU. Or MOA as well. So if any members of the council have questions, we can have them come up to help respond. Anyone? Yes, Councilmember Costanzo.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
As we are all aware, this has certainly been an ongoing problem for many of our neighborhoods. In my backyard is the wash, so I get them coming up from the Jack in the Box area, up the wash, and into all of our yards. In fact, I've lost 2 pets. You can no longer leave your little ones out in the backyard, in the front yard, anywhere, because they come out all times of the day. Bless you.
Bless you.
I was glad that we implemented our coyote management plan when we did, to provide the community with the necessary information. But I do feel it could certainly benefit us to be a part of the COG's plan. I was a former board member of the COG, and anything that they put into play, you can always be assured that it's going to be well run and effective. I feel lately with some of the incidents that Ms. Shaparian talked about, that everybody had a number to call, but it was like everybody was pointing at everybody else to solve the problem, and I don't think we ever get to a solution. So I think by being a part of, it's a minimal amount, in my opinion, of being a part of this program, at least for 2 years, so we can see how it, if it does benefit us and our community in some way. So I would be in support. We need to do something. We need to keep moving along in providing whatever we can to the residents of this community. And so with saying that, I would be in favor of being a part of this plan, coyote plan.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Costanzo. Councilmember Leal.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, 10,000 sounds like small number of money, but it is big, because I called the trapper, and they charge $250 per trap for 2 weeks. And if they caught anything, they will charge additional $200 to remove it. Okay, so total is $450 per trap. And if you divide by, let's see, 10,000 by 450, well, you have to catch, I don't know, at least 22 coyotes, you have to come up with 10,000. So, but I know they will be killed after they caught, and that's why I don't want to see that. But I think that's probably the most efficient way. You know, all these coyotes, they came down from mountains through washes because they need water and food, and that's why they're in our neighborhood. But, you know, if we don't do anything to prevent them to keep coming, you know, with whistles, baseball bat, I don't know. I don't think that that's very effective way, but another way maybe you can keep them out of it is the synthetic wolf's urine, and that I've heard is very expensive. I don't know how expensive that is, and you know, to cover the whole north side of San Gabriel, that's probably going to cost a lot of money. and some said it's not working, so I don't know. And so we have to keep thinking about what is the best solution. You know, we all have to live together. You know, all these animals, they were here before human being, and we're supposed to get along. But however, when they enter to our neighborhood, our pets and you know, even hurt our little kids or adults too. See, so my question for our police chief. So in case if this coyote and jump on the person, the walking dog, not biting the dog, but biting the human being, and if he's carrying a concealed weapon, can he start shooting at the coyote?
Whew. Well, first off, I wouldn't advise people carrying concealed weapons that don't have a permit to do so. So that's the first thing. But the law allows for private citizens to protect themselves against imminent threat. And so there is, and I say this not in jest, but it may be taken that way, that sometimes it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, I guess is kind of the answer we're looking at. And you have to do what you need to do to protect your folks. Now, you got to make sure that you're not over kind of doing it with the protection of property versus the protection of life. If a child or something is about to be attacked, then you would fully be expected to take whatever measures are necessary to end that threat and solve that problem. Mm-hmm. The problem is that most people are not trained in identifying or being able to articulate the threat. So you'll get people sometimes who come out and they'll do things that they want to kind of illustrate as a threat, but really isn't in the overall analysis. So that's where it becomes a problem. Can you protect yourself? Absolutely. Can you protect your children and pets? Absolutely. But what happens when we start to kind of get behind the effort to make sure we're trying to teach people the right way to do things, we invariably come up against people who will see a coyote up on a hill a ways and determine that that's a threat and start putting rounds downrange, and we don't want that to happen. So there's some balance here that we need to take into consideration.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. That was very thoughtful. Vice Mayor Menchaca.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I can attest to Chuck walking. I see him all the time, and I do the same thing. I have 2 burly dogs, big dogs, and I've only ran into a coyote once, and it happened to be in San Marino, and he just turned away. But it was frightening. It was frightening, even with my big boys with me. This is definitely a problem. We've had this discussion before. I think. I talked about that it was a regional issue. It wasn't just a city issue. I've actually met with some of the San Marino council members, and we agreed that we had to come together. So I applaud COG for stepping up. My questions, I'll start with COG. And so if one of you could please step up.
Evening. My name is Navneet.
And my name is Alex. We're both management analysts at the COG, and we've been assisting the COG with the coyote management efforts. So happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Great, thank you. So we talked about the effective date of being November 2019. And so nothing has been officially done with the cohort that you have so far. So you're going to wait till November 1st. What's the first thing you're going to do? I mean, how are you going to add value? Because it's $10,000, not a lot of money when you're thinking about, the program itself. But I still like to understand what's the value here on day one. What makes us, puts us in an advantage or in a better position than where we are now.
Right, that's a great question, actually, and glad that you asked. The first thing that the COG would do really is to establish a proper line of communication with all parties, including the city's point of contact, the police department, the state of California, as well as the county of Los Angeles. And based on the tier, in the regional coyote management framework, there is different tiers for identifying different types of coyote behavior. So we will work with the city and all parties, as well as the police department, to kind of develop proper responses that the city would like to take. Anywhere from just seeing a report of a resident, just hearing a coyote or seeing a coyote, anywhere up to, for example, maybe a coyote attack on pets. So, that would be one of our first priorities, really, aside from establishing all the other services like the reporting tool, the hotline, the websites, just so that all of the parties involved have a good expectations of how a situation when it comes to coyote should be handled.
Because we have a hotline already.
Yes.
So, but this would be on a regional basis. So if I'm in San Marino where I saw the coyote, I could call in.
Yeah.
And okay.
Yes.
One of the benefits of having this hotline and reporting tool is that we'll be able to gather data on all the cities. And as you know, coyotes aren't staying within city limits. So that'll be helpful in understanding where coyotes are being seen, where there are potential pet attacks on a regional basis. And I think that's definitely one of the advantages of having more of a regional hotline or a reporting tool.
Okay. So, I mean, we would never, or I'm just kind of thinking it through, would we ever want to tag these coyotes to try to follow them? Or, because some of them, the one I saw looked very healthy, but the one that we just saw in the photo, I mean, he was ill. I mean, seriously ill. And I do have a concern that somehow they're cared for. I mean, there's got to be some humanity here also. Is that something you would be involved with, or what would you do?
So that is not something that typically the COG would be involved with, but we are working closely with the University of California. Dr. Quinn, who has advised us a lot on the development of both of the programs, she's working on an initiative to trap and tag these coyotes and release them back to the wild. Her project currently is awaiting the permit issued by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So a project like that would be is in
Okay, so you're connected with those type of projects.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think that would be helpful because sometimes, you know, you get 20 calls and it's the same coyote, just that every neighbor is, you know, noticing them. Okay, and then I guess what would be different? Because I think every city, you know, we've all have that program on our website. You know, we have the hotline. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what would be different aside from the regional efforts. Is there anything else that, in the connection to University of California and maybe getting more of the being on the line, first line of defense kind of, you know, you would get all the updated information. Is there anything else that maybe we haven't mentioned tonight that really adds that advantage? Okay, I'm supporting the program, but I still like to kind of get a better understanding. What more can we get here?
Oh yeah, go for it.
I'm actually going to chime in and using the recent examples we had. When we reached out to the COG, I think the benefit was having another set of individuals that were committed to working with us in reaching some of the outside entities that we would need to notify. Joe and I are two, so between the two of us and actually having Alex and his team, we were able to make contacts with basically every agency at the state level, at the county level, and so just having that extra layer of resources was definitely advantageous because we weren't alone in looking for a solution. I reached out to Alex and we had not even entered the agreement that's being considered tonight. Immediately, I was able to hear, he responded to me immediately and started making phone calls to help us in looking for solutions in some very specific dangerous situations that we had. And I think that's a huge benefit besides the outreach. And when I asked their team what would they do in those particular instances besides helping us make those connections, what I thought was beneficial was that they would immediately come out and help us have a community meeting, organize the meeting with the city, provide resources and outreach. So I think that extra layer of education, information, and resource gathering would be a benefit. So I just wanted to give you our perspective in
that's
the
helpful.
most recent situations and what their role was besides what they would do as part of the framework, because those were in the last few weeks.
Because one of the alternatives you had was expanding our current program, but if we expand, we're probably going to have to hire another body because we don't have the capacity. And that extra body will probably be more than $10,000.
I think what Mark mentioned with the City of Torrance, and this is very fresh because the council considered this item last week, they actually authorized the hiring of a part-time staff person that would solely be committed to wildlife management issues. So in our case, minus the ability to do that, we're trying to maximize the tools we already have. And in the most recent instances, just having somebody at the COG level that was responding to us and reaching out to folks from the county to the state, it was definitely a tremendous help.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrington, anything?
Thank you, Mayor. I had the same types of questions, but I think I talked to Mark about this when it came on the agenda. I don't really support this simply because, like Denise said, what's the value? And even after hearing this, I don't hear value here. It's mirroring what we already have. I don't see anything happening that we don't already have. We're saying, so for example, I'm going to go through what each entity has to do. Make sure I'm the right one. Page 4. So it's basically saying they're going to coordinate and implement town halls. Well, we've had 2 in the last 2 years with San Gabriel, and if it's not going to be in San Gabriel, if it's going to be in Alhambra, good luck getting San Gabriel people to go there. We can barely get them to come to town halls in San Gabriel. So it sounds good on paper, but I don't see the value of us paying $10,000 for that. Coordinating management workshops, it's kind of the same thing. We already have that. We have all the in our plan. It shows, how to manage the conflicts. Youth outreach, it says they're going to have education programs for local schools. Is that all of our schools? And is it yearly? Is it a guarantee we're going to get all of our schools to have programs? So all these things sound good, but they have to have some type of contractual guarantees. And in the past, once we move up a level, we tend not to get the attention one city when there's 10 cities there. Managing a website, we already have a website that has everything about coyotes. Unless we did a poor job of that, I think it's a good job. But to me, I think our website is fine as far as what to do with coyotes. We have a regional online with Fullerton already, online reporting and call-in reporting. Maybe we need to make that better, easier to contact people. Coordinating with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, that's useless. They don't do anything. I've called them 10 times. Honestly, what is coordinating with them? Because they'll just tell you, sorry, we can't do anything, and you can't do anything about the coyotes. So coordinating doesn't do much for me. Managing invoicing and billing, I'm not sure what we're invoicing for in the plan. I don't see anything we would invoice somebody for. So there's a lot of things listed, because I guess we need bullet points, but I didn't see anything here where, for me to justify spending $10,000, I don't see the value, anything that we're not already doing. Because we said we had 35 calls last year, roughly, or incident calls. That's $285 a call, rough math. I don't see the value on that. I think we can take care of it for that. And then one thing I can tell you, when our residents call and we pawn them off on someone else, that's exactly what they think we're doing. Why isn't the city staff doing this? We're getting pawned off onto the San Gabriel Humane Society. We're getting pawned off onto the wildlife. We're getting pawned off to, and they keep asking me. I get a lot of emails. Why isn't staff taking care of this? And once we do, we can only tell them, what the law is. I don't know what the COG can do that we can't do. That's kind of, we are kind of just, to me, and I think we should take the responsibility. I don't think we need to hire somebody. I think between the police and between staff we do have, we can take care of it. I don't know what we're going to get for our $10,000. I haven't seen like an actual, we're committed to doing these actionable items. Here's your performance guarantees. Here's what you're getting in your contract. You're getting X number of meetings. You're getting, all your schools are getting service. So for $10,000, me personally, I can't see a value here.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Harrington. I'd like to ask, Alex and Navneet. So I heard you talk about gathering regional data on coyote behavior, and it's not specifically enumerated in the bullet points as to what the COG would be doing under the program of classification of threat level or identifying threat level. But would that potentially be a service that the COG can provide, given that it's, you're becoming a repository of data regionally on coyote behavior?
Right. So going back to the different tiers, so we know that this regional framework that the COG governing board has adopted really is meant to be a template for the cities to modify based on their own needs. So every city may have different response levels, even though we have the template right there. So one of the priorities, as we mentioned before, setting up that meeting with all of the relevant parties to go over what type of channel of communication should be established, would also involve in helping the city to establish, all right, which type of coyote behavior would categorize as which tier, if that would make sense. Do you have anything to add?
I'm sorry, so is that a yes? I got lost in your response.
Do you mind repeating your question one more time?
Will the COG help to identify threat levels?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. And then there are, I think, 31 cities in the COG, 28,
cities.
something like that. currently there's 11 cities, if I counted correctly, that have already signed up for the COG program. Is that correct?
So 13 cities, including
13?
San Gabriel, submitted the letters of interest. We have the city of Rosemead also reached out to us 2 days ago that they're interested. Now we're going through a process of signing the MOAs. Some of them are taking it to council, some of them do not have to. So, yeah.
I guess my question too is, I seem to recall, maybe this from the COG board meeting or something like that, like a sort of initial budget of $100,000 for the year. So we multiply that by, say, 13 right now, then that's $130,000 a year, which leaves an excess of $30,000 a year. Has there been any discussion yet among COG staff as to what you would do with the excess?
So we did a cost-benefit analysis on the whole program with the possibility of adding additional cities. Is that aside from most of it being spent on hiring additional full-time staff, so that the COG have more capacity to respond to residents' needs. Others include all of the printing materials, mileage reimbursements, a lot of the materials that were passed out to residents, and such as mailers and everything. So all of that would really sum up like the $130,000. So.
Okay, so in other words, sort of like you're saying the services will sort of expand to expand based upon however many cities ultimately sign up and pay in.
Yes.
Yeah, the more funds we have, the more resources we're able to give.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is one of the benefits of the program, and I think I'm coming out to support being part of the program as well. Even if it's just to have access to this regional data, to have a better understanding, when our consultant came and presented, she talked a lot about how they're territorial animals, and again, as Mr. Richter had pointed out, it seems to be true. If you take out, one animal or a pack, in a territory, the others will come in to fill the void. And if you particularly take out the alpha male or alpha female, other animals in the area will then rise up to try to become that alpha male or alpha female. You end up actually getting more pups and more coyotes in the area, that kind of thing. So beyond the I think the humanity of I also don't want to have to trap and kill. I mean, that doesn't seem like something that is reflects the values of our community. But at the same time, I understand the concerns of residents. I have seen more coyotes, even in the south, near the wash and the park, in particular. But I think having access to greater resources, being able to maybe, particularly if I think that which UC campus or which UC is doing the studies?
So it's not any specific campus, it's the Agriculture and Natural Resources Division.
Okay. Yeah. Well, they're doing a study currently on, can you expand upon what exactly they're studying?
So UCANR, Agriculture and Natural Resources, they have a specific wildlife professor, Dr. Quinn, who does a lot of coyote research, especially focusing on coyote-human conflicts. And the study that we've mentioned was that she's trying to work on a project to trap the coyotes, tag them, and then releasing them back to the wild so that we can see where the coyotes go. So that's the project that you may be referencing.
So, can I have a question, Mayor?
Yes.
So, this is against the state law. What will be the penalty if she's doing that?
So that's why she needs a permit from the Department of Fish and Wildlife to do such a project, because right now she cannot do that, because technically state law mandates that basically if you trap them, you have to kill them, or they have to be released back in the same location. So.
And I was interested also then, so as I said, I think having greater access to resources, being part of this regional framework, and being able to have a clearinghouse of information that then maybe can help us better understand what's going on. There does seem to be a sudden increase. Maybe it's due to the wildfires, maybe it's due to other things, but it does seem to be more of a spike in the last couple of years in terms of coyotes being in our neighborhoods, and then the potential for human-coyote conflicts. But one of the things that was interesting in our staff report here was talking about use of whistles and use of wolf urine. I'm really interested, and since we have you guys here too, and since Armine is our resident expert, I know this says city with a mission and not city with a wolf urine smell.
Oh boy.
But what kind of effect does, say, a whistle have for other canines? So if you're walking your dog and you're using a whistle to haze a coyote, will it also set off other canines in the neighborhood?
So based on our research, it does not, unless we're mistaken. Really, having a whistle and just blowing it when you see a coyote, so the coyote may be frightened of like loud noises or large movements. So that is one of the hazing techniques. When it comes to wolf urine, like Armine has said, like our agency's findings of it is we're kind of inconclusive to see if wolf urine or predator urine really works. But but we are very sure that at least part of the marking materials that we'll be passing out will include whistles at the minimum.
Mayor, I think from everything we've learned, first and foremost, I think we need to encourage our residents to continue not leaving any food out, making sure their trash cans are closed, because we're still having that issue in some parts of our neighborhood where when we identify where the incident is happening, there are still residents that are leaving food out. And I know we actually have a few residents who are here tonight who've become very active in their neighborhoods in educating their neighbors to make sure they're not putting food out, covering their trash cans. What Alex mentioned, the hazing techniques work, but it needs to be done. You kind of have to do several things. It's not just using the whistle. I mean, it's really using anything you have within your immediate reach to be able to haze. I think Chuck Myers would be, I think Chuck left, but I think everything he mentioned, those are all the different methods that are available to residents. As far as does the predator urine work, some residents, from what I've read, and I'm sure you guys have read some of the same things, they think that it is a deterrent. And as I mentioned earlier, I think you had asked about the cost. For one of our neighboring cities, I think they spent approximately $3,000 for 100 containers that they were distributing to residents. Those went very quickly. They are available if somebody wants to purchase them on their own. As I mentioned earlier, you could go on Amazon and purchase it. I think the jury's still out as far as exactly how effective is it, but I think that maybe the smell combined with some of the hazing techniques and the practices of not leaving food out and making sure that trash bins are closed, I think you kind of have to do all of those things together for it to work.
So a follow-up question for all of you. If you use do we know that if you use wolf urine, say, to spray your yard, will it also affect your own dog if you have one?
I don't know the answer, but I don't know if you guys know, but what I heard is it's actually you would line it around your entryways. So I'm not sure it would be you're spraying it on your lawn. It's more you put it in the areas where they would be sniffing for food. So if you typically put your cat food or your dog food right outside of your patio door, you would actually line the entrance to your patio door with the urine to deter them from going anywhere further. So I don't think it's necessarily spraying it on your lawn or spreading it throughout the perimeter. It's putting it in specific areas. I don't know if you guys have heard anything differently.
That sounds right.
Considering that it's synthetic, probably I'm assuming it should be safe for other animals as well.
Okay, safe, but I mean, I can just imagine that next person saying, "Oh, but now my own dog is freaked out to even go into the backyard or something. They think there's a wolf there," right? I mean,
and it doesn't. I think some of the research I've done, there's actually different predator urines. It's not specific to just wolves, so I think there might be other options.
Well, no, because I've always actually thought, why not? That seems like a natural way of trying to deter them from, at least coming onto your property. You see them going down the street or something like that. I don't think I would suggest that we just try to, cover the whole city or the entire north or something like that. But it would be a way of perhaps protecting, your own pets, your own children, if they're playing in their backyard. Because I feel like one of the most heartfelt pleas that we hear is when people say, "Oh, we can't even let our kid play in our own backyard," or my cat. Well, cats sometimes, if you let them go out at night, they'll wander off. You can't really guarantee that they're going to be safe if you let them do that. So anyway. So I do think that that's interesting, it's something that we should explore. And these whistles, are they whistles that only like dogs can hear, or what kind of whistles are you talking about? They're regular whistles.
They're loud whistles.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would personally favor seeing if we, should provide some. Last question, and this might be a question for Greg, or I don't know, because on the issue of keeping your trash bins closed, sometimes you might have a party or something, you just bought something, and so your trash bin is stuffed with cardboard boxes or something like that, and the pickup only comes once a week. What can residents possibly do if their bin is already full? Because I know this for a fact. Some of my neighbors, I see their bins there, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm surprised it's not crawling with rats or raccoons or whatever. Where it's like that the lid is half open. So is there anything that we can offer to be able, if you have excess trash, to be able to dump it somewhere? I know this would incur a cost, but how else are you supposed to, as a resident, manage that kind of situation?
Vice Mayor, Mayor.
Yeah.
As he's walking up, what I've done in the past, because, having multiple kids who love to have gatherings at our house, I've asked my neighbors if I can borrow. They seem to have some excess in their trash cans. So, that's something that people should consider, is asking your neighbors. But if the city, I think the question is specifically, does the city offer anything?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not proposing it at the moment, because I think that, good neighbors might allow that, and I don't know what the cost or ramifications would be, but, it occurs to me that, you can say do X, Y, and Z, but then the practical reality is that, people are just going to do whatever is convenient for them.
Vice Mayor Menchaca stole my answer. But it is not acceptable for trash to overflow and spill outside of the container. Having the lid open and mounding up is okay. Most animals can't climb that. My name? Greg DeVink with the Public Works Director. When I've had that, the bigger problem is usually crows. They will try to flick through it when it's mounded up. But it is not acceptable for anything to spill onto the ground. We do clean up, and code enforcement can issue citations for that. But generally, people tend to borrow their neighbors' cans that have capacity for extra garbage.
Yeah. In a way, that's maybe a good thing to encourage neighborly interactions. Yeah, well, it gets... Okay. Thank you for answering those questions. I do think that we might look into if there is any potential budget, or if the COG might be able to provide some of those types of items as part of its services, like whistles and samples perhaps of wolf, or is bear urine ever used? I was talking to a Sierra Madre council member. He says, "Oh, we also have bears, and they actually scare the coyotes away." So,
I think everything I read said predators, so it could be bears, it could be wolves. I'm not sure which other animals, but I think just the mere smell is a deterrent. So anything that has just a pungent smell.
Okay, thank you.
I like to move.
Please do. Questions? Yes, Councilmember.
Yeah, these are actually maybe for council, maybe not. Because I would like to discuss the trapping, because We had it in the past, and I think, yes, when you remove an animal, it might get replaced, but we're not just going to go out and trap just to trap. The whole idea of trapping is when you have a high threat animal that's aggressive. Once they get aggressive, they stay aggressive. So we need to have that in the plan and the ability to not have to wait 5 weeks to go do an RFP and get a trapping. And so I think it's a good tool to have. If we never use it, that's great. But I really think we should discuss that as far as what that should be something we enact tonight. Because I know we used to have that. I don't know if we still have a trapping company. I don't recall. If we don't, we probably should think about that. Because when we do get a high threat level, if you get rid of the high threat and another animal comes in, it's not necessarily going to be aggressive like the one you replaced. And then second, if we're going to move to execute the MOA, I'd like to have it more specific than just say outreach to local schools, because what's a local school? Is Alhambra a local school? So when they do outreach, they're saying, oh, we're doing Alhambra High. It's like, how does that do our kids any good? We should have some San Gabriel specific terms in here. So when you're doing outreach, say to all of the elementary and high school or something. So when we go to, let's say we decide, hey, we're not getting serviced here, how do we define a breach? They did service schools, they did a website, they have a hotline. And I'm not going to support it either way, but I'm just saying at least protect the city and have a bill of goods that we're buying that we can identify to our constituents that we're paying for something, that we're getting the value of the service. Otherwise, what are we getting? Like, we're just saying, yay, we joined a Council of Governments program. What did you get out of it? So I really think it should be, this is just a template agreement. The only place it says San Gabriel in it is in the top. That's it. There's nothing here I could hold them to. If I said, hey, you breached, they can say, no, we have a website, we have a hotline, we did some local training. That's my 2 cents.
Councilman Harrington, just to take your questions in reverse order, it was my understanding that we were going to have San Gabriel specific services, and we can make sure we clarify that when we bring this back and throw it on a consent calendar for consideration. But when we talked earlier about, or when you mentioned earlier in your comments about having a town hall meeting, those would be San Gabriel town hall meetings, and those could even be community-specific meetings in areas where we're having a high influx of encounters. It wouldn't be something that we invite San Gabriel residents and go to Alhambra and learn.
And that's kind of my point. This is not something I can say yes to. It doesn't say 1 meeting per year. It doesn't say how many. Are they frequent? Are they as needed? Is there a minimum? So those are all things. Before I could support anything, it would have to be specific. Something that, because right now I couldn't draft a termination or a breach on this. What did they breach? Nothing.
Ms. Chaparian and I can definitely work with the COG to make sure we get some specificity in there. As for your first concern about trapping, this plan would not supersede the city's existing plan. As my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the COG will not engage in trapping. So if there's an imminent threat, they're not going to use the $10,000 to provide trapping.
That's not my point. My point is one of the options was to consider trapping. So I'm saying we should consider trapping.
That would be, that was probably not explained thoroughly enough in the report. That would be a wholesale trapping program. Our current plan allows for, if there's an imminent circumstance, as an example in 2017, there was a coyote that was going to one of the schools and was on that school site multiple times, and so it was determined by staff at that time that that was an issue that needed to be taken care of, and the ability to trap falls under staff level of approval as far as being awarded for the contract, and the contracts are underneath the staff level approval for a one-time issue. The discussion on having a trapping was more for a wholesale trapping program like some other cities. West Covina is another that was looking at doing that, and I put that in there for informational purposes. But we would still, as a community, have the ability to handle one-off circumstances if situations warranted it, and I would definitely let the council know if that were to happen so that it wouldn't be done in the dark.
Yeah, the reason I say that is just because it was presented as an alternative. Consider trapping services on page 5. And then it's on the recommendation, it says to consider the several options presented. So that's why I bring that up.
Correct.
And it would actually include creating a short list of qualified vendors, which we don't currently have. So the intention of the alternative was to look at who's out there providing the service and the costs. And if there's an instance where we were reached out for that information, we would also have it available, which we don't at this point.
So that's my point, though. If we do have a motion here tonight, I think we should empower staff to do that. I think that anything there would be within your contracting authority.
Okay. As I understand it, we don't currently have. This is why I wanted to clarify that part of the COG services would be to help at least consult and help us to identify threat levels. Guys, I think that this is really important to also be able to not just make those kinds of determinations in the dark or alone. That we're making those kinds of determinations based upon information that is more regional. Just because we think that one coyote might be sick or might be a threat. Having some comparative data is, I think, helpful in that evaluation. So I guess I'll take a motion and we'll see where it goes from there.
Sorry, wrong. Late. I'd like to move to authorize the MOA and ask staff to bring it back with maybe some more specifics. And also to go out and do an RFQ on trapping services.
Just for clarification, we don't need to go out to the RFQ if we're just going to do the continued threat level 5. We can just do that on a one-off basis without having that
So I'll amend it.
predetermined list, and we don't have to wait 5 weeks if their COG was to help us with one of those.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to, I move to approve the MOA.
Okay, motion and second to approve the MOA with the COG with direction to provide greater specificity in the actual contract. Motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-1 with Councilmember Harrington voting against the motion.
Okay, thank you. Next item. And thanks to COG staff for coming and providing their expertise.
Item B, consideration of creating a city towing service franchise agreement. Presentation will be made by Police Chief Eugene Harris.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the council, good evening. You have before you a staff report for discussion in considering creating a city tow service franchise agreement. Rather than the industry standard franchise agreement, the City of San Gabriel currently operates its police-initiated tow service through an informal agreement. While the informal agreement with Dixon's Tow has been satisfactory, and they have been a great partner, the representatives from Dixon's are here today with us. They've been a great partner. The benefits of a towing service agreement include a reduction in city liability and exposure, better control of services provided to the public, and a method of cost recovery for city administrative costs. These agreements ensure appropriate authorities and responsibilities are identified for the security of vehicles and other property, in addition to administration of police-related vehicle impounds, storages, and other tow-related operations. Overall, a franchise agreement will ultimately ensure the quality and professionalism of the towing service represented by the city. The essence of it is that we want to move into towing operations best practices that are currently the industry standard. This agreement would not, or would only apply to police-related tow operations and would not have any impact on private tows or other business-related tow services. The recommendation is that we are seeking a council direction as to the establishment of a city tow service franchise ordinance, release of a request for qualifications, and a subsequent agreement for police department initiated tow services within the City of San Gabriel. And with that, I will take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Questions? Councilman or Vice Mayor Menchaca.
Sure. Thank you, Chief. First of all, I just wanted to applaud your efforts in trying to bring best practices, opening the process, and protecting our city and residents. So I thank you for that. I was just trying to understand, when you say informal agreement, does that mean there's no contract? Or what does that mean, informal agreement?
I think the essence of our involvement with our current tow service has existed for many, many years. And as I said, they've been a great partner. But one of the things that we didn't have was an agreement that really specifies all of the things that modern day police operational towing services would require. So what we're really seeking to do here from a best practices perspective is to just kind of codify those needs and the things that fall within the California Highway Patrol regulations.
So is that why, for example, attachment A, you have various agencies or cities, their police departments, and you have a matrix, and you do a comparison, but what's missing is San Gabriel. So was there a reason? Well, I guess if we don't have a contract, then there's no termination of contract, there's no term of contract, there's no selection process. I mean, I guess some of those, can't be filled out, but everything else we should be able to fill out. Is that part of the issues that we don't understand specifically some of the terms, or why wasn't the city included in this matrix?
Well, I think the matrix was designed to give you a preview of what agencies that currently have these agreements are working with, comparatively speaking, so that when we put our agreement together, if or when we put it together, we had some kind of framework to go by. With our relationship and our current tow agreement, again, we haven't identified any negligent issues or any of those kind of things that relate to our current service provider, but we didn't include it here because there really is there's no wrapping to it. We don't know what all of those issues are. We would have to go through kind of the minuscule details of all of the elements, and that would kind of not be appropriate for this particular staff report. But it's certainly something that as we sit down to try and figure out what components are going to be in the agreement, we would sit down and take a look at.
Okay, great. And, my understanding is that looking at some of the other towing services, or including the ones we use right now, they're rated, AAA rating. It talks about their services. There's Al's Towing, there's Jan's Towing, Freddie Mac. Do you know what the rating is are for those type of towing companies?
There are several towing agencies, the one that's in San Gabriel and others around this community that have a high rating, a AAA rating. Dixon's is one of those companies that has a rating, and as I said, I want to make sure I reiterate, none of this is designed as a hit to Dixon's. They have provided excellent service for us. Again, we're back to just professionalizing the contractual services.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. And is there any capacity issues? Maybe something that we've had a need for in the past, but we can't get it currently. I think maybe one of the things mentioned here, or maybe I just heard somewhere about the security of vehicles, that there's a requirement when we impound it, they have to be in a secure site. Is that correct? Or
part of the best practices model, and certainly in conjunction with the California Highway Patrol requirements, there needs to be at the tow site the ability to secure at least 2 vehicles that have to be held for evidence. Currently, our vehicles that we hold for evidence are held at our station, but these are simple fixes that we would be more than happy to work with whomever it is we're working with, certainly if it's our local tow company, to make those things happen. And so there are a lot of elements that are required in that process that we would be more than happy to work with whomever it is that we work with to get those things done.
Okay, so if we would work with either the current or a new towing service, I mean, that would be one of the areas that we would have to, we would advocate to change, as opposed to having the police department holding those vehicles. We would prefer to have best practices to have an independent agency of sorts to hold them.
Yes. We would need to have someplace where we could maintain for a chain of custody, and certainly for any of our legal requirements that come as a result of a tow operation, be able to secure the vehicles for whatever that time frame needed to be so that we can conduct our investigation. I'm not sure change is the right word or the way I would use it, but certainly ensure that all of these elements are in place, as indicated on page 4 of your staff report. There are in the bullets there are several items that would be included in the requirements. Almost all of these are currently being met, and the ones that aren't are simple fixes, in my opinion.
So that was actually my next question, because I was kind of taken aback a little bit, with the emphasis of minimum, because I know you're always, we need to do better, it's always, but this specifically said minimum. So which ones are the ones that we're not meeting right now? You said there's a few. Which ones are those?
Well, there's a couple here, and again, although they're not being met, some of them had never been required, so they would just simply be a matter of letting our current tier service know this is what we're going to do based on what our minimum requirements are. But one of those is making sure that we have those requirements met for being able to house the 2 vehicles in a secure environment, free from any type of outside exposure to the elements, exposure certainly to other employees or people who might be in the yard. So that might be one. The other is a hold harmless agreement with the city. I've been unable to find whether that exists or not. I've searched for it, and I haven't been able to locate it. So those are elements that are required.
That's an important element.
That's an important element in the franchise agreement. And the other is the fingerprinting and background checks of all the drivers. And so currently with our current tow service, they are certainly backgrounded, and we've not had any issues. But the requirement for the best practices piece is to ensure that they're also fingerprinted. And so those are just elements, really, we can do that fingerprinting. So it doesn't create really an onus on the provider to go out and figure out how that's going to get done. We would certainly work with folks to make sure we can get that done.
Okay. And then, let's see. Okay, I think that's all for now. Thank you for answering the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor Menchaca. Others?
Yes.
Councilmember
Thank you,
Leal?
Mayor. So if we send out this RFQ, and based on what kind of guidelines we can consider that is the right towing company that would work for San Gabriel?
Well, previously, cost would be the determining factor.
Okay.
We'd go with the lowest cost that put in for it. But however, we've kind of amended that in some recent actions put into place by staff, where cost is one factor, but quality is another factor.
Okay.
And those are issues that certainly the tow service that is closest to us meets some of the requirements. One of those being to be able to respond in 20 minutes or less in 90% of the time, 24 hours a day.
Right.
So those are elements that certainly kind of bear in the favor of more local or centralized tow services such as the one we currently use.
Okay. What about the tow lot? Say if it's outside of a city of San Gabriel, how far it has to be? Because by the requirements, it has to be big enough to store 20 vehicles outdoor and then 2 enclosed. So where's that the lot to store all these cars has to be inside the city jurisdiction, or can be outside?
Requirements for selection of a provider would make it within a 5-mile radius of
5 miles.
of the city of San Gabriel.
Okay.
So that
But
includes,
not necessarily within the city.
not necessarily, but that's an option.
Okay. Last question. So we signed the agreement with this towing company, but if you look at page 4, this company cannot advertise that is an official towing service for the city. Why is not? They already signed a contract with the city, and they can advertise, oh yeah, we're doing the service for the city of San Gabriel. Why we're not allowed them to do that?
Well, I think there's some legal restrictions with that are kind of outside of my purview. But as we did the research, we determined that was not included in the best practices piece. I don't have a direct answer for you on that, but I can certainly research and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
The other side to that is not only from a legal standpoint, but it also implies that there's some sort of an endorsement by the city, and we stay away from that as much as possible.
Councilmember Costanzo.
Thank you, Mayor. So can you tell me the process, Chief, of how we get the RFQ out to potential bidders?
I believe we use an RFQ clearinghouse that we use, same as we do with a lot of our construction projects and things. And we put it out there, and we set a time frame for them to get back with the request for qualifications. And then we go through the qualifications per our standard protocol, and then take a look at narrowing it down to the company that we've used.
So I'm sure the towing companies are familiar with this process, since so many cities follow
Yes.
this practice?
Yes.
And then once you get back all these submissions, and if all the criteria that you've listed here, they fall within, who's the final decision maker? Is it us as city council or you as the chief of police?
I would go out and do, myself and my staff would go out and do a site inspection, make sure all the elements are met, and then we would come back before council and make a recommendation based on all of those factors.
And it would be a recommendation on one entity, or would you possibly be giving us 2 or 3 to choose from?
There's various ways to do it. You can make temporary. You can do it annually. You can do many different ways of kind of spreading the wealth if that's the desire of the council. We can make a one-off recommendation. I've known some agencies, including the one that I came from prior, that did an alternating thing between 2 companies that were within the same distance. On odd days it was this company, on even days it was that company. So there's a lot of variables. I think the simple way to do it is to go with a single company and we can manage it that way.
You know, us women, we like to have many choices.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You said it.
Okay. Councilmember Harrington? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
I just had a few questions about the actual parameters and the requirements. I noticed in the matrix that several of the agencies had a $3 million insurance. You were suggesting a $1 million insurance. I think there's 3 with $3 million, about 5 with $1 million out of the surveyed cities. Is there a reason we want the lower amount of insurance? Do you think you get less responses, or?
No, in our study, we looked at 1 million. Typically, even outside of the survey cities that we did, 1 million was more prevalent, and it seems to be the industry standard even for tow companies. So we went with that because we thought it would provide us the best opportunity to broaden our field of choices.
And I was unclear because you said we would recover roughly $32,000 based on what we're towing right now, and it seemed like in the memo that that's not actually covering our costs. Is that the case, or did I misread that?
Well, what we want to do is make sure we avoid the appearance that we are trying to be in cahoots with anyone to go out and generate profit from tow services. We need to avoid that at all costs, and so there's no guarantee that we are ever going to recover all of the costs because there are so many variables. Time, the cost of the equipment or officers or type of call that we're responding to. So there are some variables to it. What we're giving you is really what we think is about the average. It could be more, it could be less, but ideally we want to just make sure that we have a set practice and protocol so that we know exactly what it is we're doing. The tow company knows exactly what the fees are, and we can move through that operational spectrum.
Yeah, because I mean, if we're going to go out for an RFQ and we're saying right off the bat we don't think the amount we're going to recover covers our costs, we should probably try and get closer to what we think will recover our costs. I'm not trying to say let's make money off of the towing. That's not the goal, but at least recoup what we're putting into it, or what we could honestly say this is covering our costs, or we're very close to it. Unless it's 32,000 and you're saying it's 33 or 35, but if it's 50, that's a whole other magnitude of expense. So I just want to make sure that we're going to go through this process. Let's at least get as close as we can to covering our costs.
Okay. I can have the staff take a look at that.
And I think I had one more. And then on the 5 miles, that's simply because we don't want, just because someone is towed, we don't want them going too far to have to go to recover their vehicle.
There are a whole lot of variables. That's one of them. The other is response time. There's a formula to it. Distance times the number of trucks times activity and volume creates a circumstance where we want to make sure they meet that other requirement for being able to respond within 20 minutes, 90% of the time, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, because I was going to say, if they're 5 miles away and they're on near the 605 almost, like Peck Road, or that's about the extent of 5 miles, middle of the day, like 3 p.m., they're not getting here in 20 minutes.
Depends on the number.
of the time.
Depends on number of trucks. Depends on the activity and volume and so on. But the other part of it is also making sure that they're close enough that when people come to get their releases and pay the department or the city for their release, that we're not sending them to Ontario to get a release for their vehicle. So
yeah, that's kind of. I was thinking even 5 miles is a bit far, honestly, because if you do the 5 mile radius from the city limits, you're going from El Sereno to Peck Road, a little past Peck Road.
Well,
and I drive that all the time, and it's longer than 20 minutes.
Me too. It's a long way. But the tow trucks are out doing their thing, and I'm not an expert in the tow business, but these companies certainly have it mastered where they have people out, doing what tow truck companies do, getting out there, spreading the wealth, making sure they're out there to service the community. But the other piece is that not everybody that gets a car impounded or towed is from the city of San Gabriel. They could be from any number of surrounding communities, and it's unfortunate that we get cars towed, impounded, and stored, but it's the reality of the business. And so sometimes you're going to get a guy who gets his car towed who lives right next door to the tow company where the car's being stored, so he can walk right to the tow company and get his car. So I mean, there's variables to it.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
When I'm done, I'll say thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Harrington. I'd just like to thank Mark and Chief for bringing this to our attention and updating our practices and ensuring that we can stay current with best practices. I do think also that having to one of Councilmember Costanzo's questions, having more than one service creates competition and not only helps to keep the towing services accountable, but also us as a city as well, because as has been mentioned in the staff report, the towing company does then ultimately represent the city as well when they're dealing with the folks who have to get their car or whatnot, or the service that they provide. It could be a vehicle crash, that kind of a thing, and so having multiple service providers, I think, would help ensure that we're always getting the best service we can. So thanks for doing all of the background work. I think I fully support the recommended action. Yep. Is there a motion for it?
I'll move.
For
the motion, should I just read it?
You can just say recommended action.
Okay,
if you want.
I move for the recommended action.
All right, is there a second? Okay.
Well, I just want to clarify, for private people, they want to call it AAA, they still can have their options to choose, right? So this is just for city police department.
Absolutely. This only relates to police-generated tow services.
Okay, thank you. Second.
All right, motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, next item, please.
Item C, urgency ordinance amending Title III, Section 34 of the San Gabriel Municipal Code, purchasing procedures. Presentation will be made by Management Specialist and Acting Finance Director, Paula Chamberlain.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The ordinance before you updates the purchasing section of the city's municipal code. The result, if approved, changes how we post bid notices. We'll be changing from publishing in the newspaper to publishing on the city's website and one place that we publish regular notices. It increases the lower limit of no bid purchases from $1,000 to $3,000. It requires written bids for purchases between $3,000 and $15,000, and it does not change the $15,000 formal bid limit. It prohibits bid splitting, prohibits gratuities unless promotional items of nominal value. It provides for quality-based selection of professional services, and it matches all the exclusions in those of the current purchasing policy. After approval, if approved, staff will amend the purchasing policy as necessary and return to City Council for additional approval of that policy. I stand ready to answer questions.
Thank you, Paula. Any questions?
Excuse me. I'd like to offer a clarification, I think, on the attached ordinance, something I noticed while I was sitting up here. If you're inclined to vote in favor of this tonight, I would recommend, so that it's clear, if you look at the exhibit that's attached to the ordinance, the exhibit is the amendment of the municipal code, and it adds some new sections that have been brought over from our existing policy, but it also renumbers some existing sections and doesn't include the text of those sections. And I want to make it clear that the purpose of this is not to repeal those sections, and that if this is approved, it should be approved as if each of those renumbered sections is restated as it currently exists in the municipal code in full here.
Correct.
And I apologize for not catching that earlier, but that again, just so for clarity, this is not intended as a repeal of those sections that have been renumbered, and that this should be, quote unquote, amended to include those sections.
Yes.
The full language of each of those sections.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I think I was wondering of why there's no text for those sections, but so if approved, then the motion should include that note, as it's I think more ministerial than policy level. But in that vein, I would actually I think there's a correction that should be made to the, section 34.32b, where it says purchases between, and now it says just say 3,000 and 15,000, informal contract purchase for amounts over. I think that should say 3,000, not 5,000, since that's what we're amending, but not more than 15,000 may be based on informal written bids, so forth and so on. Is that correct?
I'm looking at Paula, but that would seem to be, his change would seem to be correct to me. The first instance is just the caption, and it should be consistent with the second sentence.
Yes.
The other thing I would potentially change back, because we have the red line here in the exhibit, is 34.32a. The reason is because it says, general, it reads currently, general purchases of supplies and equipment of an estimated value in the amount of $15,000 or less may be made by the purchasing officer in the open market pursuant to procedures set forth in this section without observing the procedures set forth. And then there's a change to say herein, but I actually think that we do want to specify that those purchases can be made without observing the procedures set forth in section 34.31, which is the section that has the formal contract procedure. Essentially taking those purchases of less than 15,000 out of that formal contracting contract procedure, but not taking it out of the rest of the section, because if you say without observing procedures set forth herein, I think there's vagueness as to what does that herein refer to. It doesn't exempt it from the rest of those of the rest of the code and all the rest of the sections that are we're talking about in this part of this amendment. Would our city attorney agree?
The herein, I'm sorry, the herein was to include the exclusions in 34.35?
34.35 items.
But on the other side of the coin, 34.34, I guess we would. Is it correct that we would still want that to apply?
Yes.
So then I guess so then I think we would need to specify 34.31 and 34.35.
Okay.
Wait a second, though. Why wouldn't we? 34.35. We now have to go into legal speak. So 34.35 are exclusions, and then if you were to specify that the the exclusions would also be exempted from these purchases under 15,000. So, it creates a little bit of a double negative, but I think the only procedure that you were saying we would exempt these open market purchases from is the formal contract procedure. 34.35 would then still apply, those exclusions with respect to piggyback purchasing, sole source, and so forth.
That is correct, because it applies to the $15,000 and over limit.
Under.
Well, the 34.31 is the formal procedures. Yeah, 3431 is the formal contract procedure. 3432 is informal.
Correct. So in other words, I wouldn't say that, okay, purchases under 15,000 can be done without observing the procedures set forth in 34 or 35. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the mayor's correct with this.
Okay.
Okay. So that wasn't a strong vote of confidence, but I mean, I think it was some validation. I mean, is there any other discussion, questions? Again, I feel like, updating our policies and procedures to best practices. Yes, sir.
So my question is why this is considered urgency ordinance, that's all. Why is it urgent?
We're requesting this be done as an urgency ordinance. The purpose of this really is to harmonize our existing policies, not to add a new policy. But we have several contracts, including one that's coming up immediately following tonight, that would need to be accomplished prior to the 45 days or so that we would have under a normal ordinance procedure. And I think in an abundance of caution, we want to make sure that our policies are consistent as soon as we can.
And
So
I'll
I'd
note,
like to
oh, sorry,
motion to approve.
and I'll note that we will be going through the regular ordinance process as well. So this is just to, it's a Band-Aid to make sure that, anything in the interim will be okay. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot to mention our recommendation is to come back at the next regular meeting with a standard version of this that will obviously include the changes we talked about tonight. The reason we didn't have that on tonight to do at the same time is because the noticing requirements for a standard ordinance are different. We just didn't have time to accomplish it. So, but we nevertheless have to do this tonight because we've got contracts that need to be approved in that interim period.
Mayor Pooh, would you mind restating your suggested correction, your last one,
The last one, yes.
please?
So 34.32A would then read general. Purchases of supplies and equipment of an estimated value in the amount of $15,000 or less may be made by the purchasing officer in the open market pursuant to the procedures set forth in this section without observing the procedures set forth in section 34.31.
Okay.
And then the other change was section 34.32B, purchases between $3,000 and $15,000. Informal contract purchases for amounts over $3,000, but not more than $15,000, may be based on informal written bids / quotations and shall be awarded by the purchasing officer to the lowest responsible bidder.
Thank you.
Anything else? So I will move to approve as amended, also noting the initial comments from our city attorney regarding the text of the sections that for which the section numbers are being amended, but none of the text of that are being amended, repealed, or otherwise modified. Second. Motion and second. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. Next item, please.
Item D, 2019 San Gabriel Dumpling and Beer Fest. Presentation will be made by Economic Development Manager Angelica Frostalupo.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members.
Good evening.
The item before you is a professional services agreement with KCM Agency to co-produce the 5th Annual Dumpling and Beer Fest. Before going into details of the agreement, I'd like to share some details about the event that's scheduled for October 4th from 6 to 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m., excuse me. I'd like to point out that this is the 5th anniversary, and we're excited about the expanded programming and expanded event area. Also important to note that historically the event has been held on a Thursday, similar to many of our community engagement events. But one of the comments that we've consistently heard over the years is that why have the event on a Thursday? Why not a weekend? So we thought we'd try it for the 5th anniversary. So it is Friday, October 4th. I mentioned the expanded event area. So the street closures will be from on Mission Drive from Broadway on the north to Mission Road on the south, and include area on Santa Anita from Carmelita to Broadway on the east. The event area or the programming will not go all the way down to Mission Road. It will more or less end at about City Hall on Mission Drive. And on Santa Anita will not go all the way east to Broadway, but will end more or less mid-block, just before the ingress-egress behind the Playhouse. So in terms of programming, we do have a second stage this year. The main stage will be on the plaza, and that will be a live band, Mestizo Beat, that we've actually received a grant from the Los Angeles County Arts and Cultural Commission, so we're excited about that. The second stage is a smaller stage, and it will showcase local acts, mostly bands, but we do have a K-pop dance group that we're excited to have. And the dance group has members from throughout the San Gabriel Valley, not just here in San Gabriel. Another new addition to this year's event is a homebrew competition, and homebrewers are being asked to donate 10 kegs of beer to the San Gabriel Chamber. And wristband holders will have an opportunity to purchase homebrew tastings for a set price. So the homebrew competition is not a sanctioned competition. It's really just fun and informal, and guests will have an opportunity to vote on their favorite beer. Finally, this year's host for the dumpling eating competition and the best dumpling competitions will be Jimmy Wong. He is starring as Ling in Disney's live-action Mulan, which is going to open in spring of 2020. We're very excited to have him. He first gained notoriety as a YouTuber for his role in Ted in a show called Video Game High School. Jimmy is also co-host of Feast of Fiction, also a YouTube channel which has over 1.2 million subscribers. And the KCM agency has worked with the city on dumpling and beer since the inception of the event in 2015. KCM is intimately familiar with the objectives of the event and the city's community engagement efforts. KCM also produces the city's highly successful Lunar New Year festival held each year here in the Mission District. The Dumpling and Beer Fest event is unique in that beer tasting wristband sales are sold to help offset the cost of producing the event. As part of the agreement, KCM agency will manage the beer tasting wristband sales through Eventbrite. They will also collect the sales at the door through credit card and debit card. KCM agency will deduct the agreed agency fees of $21,400 from the sales of the revenue. And additionally, KCM may deduct any staff-approved production expenses necessary for the event, such as prizes, trophies, ribbons, extra signage, etc. KCM agency will remit any remaining funds to the city within 7 days after they've settled done a final settlement. And if the total sales of the wristbands, either online or at the door, do not exceed the agency fees or the staff-approved expenses, then the city will pay KCM agency the remaining balance. The agreement also includes a sponsorship as an additional service with a 25% commission. However, I think it's important to note that the commission will only be paid for any new sponsors that KCM brings in. For example, we already had a relationship with Newport Seafood, who was a sponsor last year. We also, as staff, brought in the Sheraton as a sponsor, so we will not be paying commission to KCM for those sponsors. The professional services agreement with KCM requires that they secure at least 25 food vendors, so we will be having more food vendors this year. We are requiring that at least 6 of those food vendors be San Gabriel based, and to date they have 8, so we're happy to report that they've already met that requirement. 20 breweries with 30 beer varieties. Additionally, KCM will be responsible for managing the will call booth, and on the day of the event, they're responsible for the coordination and the management of the event. So staff recommends the City Council approve the agreement with KCM Agency and authorize an expenditure of $21,400 for the production of the San Gabriel Dumpling and Beer Fest. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Angelica. Any questions? Vice Mayor Menchaca.
Yes. Angelica, I think the only complaint we've ever had about the dumpling is the food, because it's never enough. And people spend, hours on that line. And so you said that we're increasing it to 25. What did we have last year? How
20.
many? 20. Boy. And this is including Luna's is open, and even, Bolciano's is open. I just want to know if there's an option where it's something quick that people don't have to stand in line with, because if you want legitimate dumplings, you have to wait.
Yeah, we did open it up to other food vendors. So in the past, we've required our food vendors to have some dumpling. So, and as you mentioned, that does take some time. So this year we have opened it up. So we have Spitz food truck, that's Mediterranean wraps and bowls. Ralph and Richie's, they're Polish dogs and sandwiches. And there was one other that, if you give me a moment, I will.
So we are going to have a diverse selection.
Yes.
Okay.
So we just
That's
thought
good to
it
know.
was important to expand the number of food vendors we have, but also expand the offerings.
Okay, yeah, because and then will we have any vegan options or vegetarian options? Because that's another issue that comes into play.
Some of our vendors traditionally have offered some vegan menu items. I don't have all the menus in front of me right now, but yes.
Okay, that would be good. Well, I hope 25 is enough. Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to point out beer is vegan, so.
Yeah, yes, it is. And as my grandfather was called.
Councilmember Leal?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Hey, this is exciting. Dumpling and beer, I consider this as one of our signature event in the city of San Gabriel. So, I got so much compliments from all over, and I'm trying to promote this our event too, and not just in the state of California, all throughout the nation. So you know how important this is to all of us. But however, I got, not complaint, but some people love dumplings, but they don't like to drink beer. So I thought, it have to be inclusive. And in our communities, for instance, we have this excellent boba place. I know he has 500,000 followers, so it's amazing. And so if we can invite, a couple of those boba milk teas to come to join the event, and I think we can and more different flavors of the drinks and make everybody happy. So that's my one suggestion. And also, I like to do salsa dance.
Oh.
So if it's possible, we could have a salsa dance contest. After eating all these dumplings. Yeah, the dumpling eating contest, great. Yeah, after eating 40, 50, I remember that young, skinny lady, she ate about, I don't remember how many, but, we need to exercise. So let's have a dance contest. So include that, okay?
We'll think about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Leal. Anybody else? No? I also think this is one of those award-winning events, so thanks to the staff for organizing it every year and bringing it forward. I just wanted to confirm, it seems like the wristband prices are an increase. Is that correct?
At the door. The online sale price is the same. It was $29 last year, but last year at the door price was $30, and this year we did increase it to $40 at the door so that we can get the sales to come in earlier.
Okay, got it. So you think that the increased pricing at the event will encourage pre-sales? Okay. Sounds good to me. And is there one more question?
Yeah, along those lines, how many wristbands do we make available? I mean, do we have a capacity or a limit?
Our idea was about 1,500, but we're actually thinking about capping it at less than 1,500.
Because they did run out. A lot of it ran out last year.
And because
beer,
almost every vendor ran out last year.
We're shooting for the 20 breweries with the three beer varieties. We were hoping to get more, but it looks like we're not going to get more than the 20, so we may lower that number.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good problem to have when you don't have enough of the beer, the dumplings, the food to serve all the people who are going to be here. So it's been a very successful event. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Let's vote.
Motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Great, thank you. Next item.
Public comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you wish to address the City Council, we request that you please complete a speaker's request card and hand it to the clerk. When speaking, please state your name for the record.
Would any of the 2 remaining members of the public like to address us at this time? Okay. Are there 3? Okay. Oh, yes, there's 3. That's true. I'm sorry. Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll keep this brief, given that we've had a long night. But I did want to point out to council that when we adopted the budget this year, we adopted the annual increase for the San Gabriel Valley Humane Society's contract. And at that time, I was a bit dismayed because of the increase in the price. It went up from about $195,000 to $258,000, which was about a 30% or 35% increase. We've included that in the budget, so there aren't any issues with that. But at the time I was dismayed. I guess I didn't realize how good we had it, because the cities of Arcadia, La Cañada, Bradbury, Monrovia, San Marino, and at least one other that I'm forgetting, all are served by the Pasadena Humane Society, and they received notices this week that their rates are going up by 500%. So as an example, Arcadia's costs were about $90,000 a year, which seems abnormally low, but their new cost is $450,000, and they don't really have an alternative to do that.
San Gabriel Humane Society is an alternative.
So what that means to us is exactly what Councilman Harrington is talking about. That could be a potential for us to work with the Humane Society to increase their capacity, and that would help us with economies of scale. But certainly, we know we are well within the market for what we've been paying, and I think that is a good reiteration of that.
Have you been in communication with Cindy about, suggesting exactly that?
I have, and in fact, Brian Cook from the city of Temple City and I were working with her back when the contract increases went into place, because we want to help her figure out how to stabilize her costs, because that obviously works to our benefit. So we will be definitely looking at whether there's some sort of a regional model that we can include the society in.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
I would like to mention that the Humane Society is having their 95th anniversary. That's a great time for them to participate. It's on October 5th, Saturday, and it is at the Humane Society. So, I would love to have invitations sent to these cities to kind of encourage them to come out and get to know our Humane Society a little bit more.
Okay, was that all that you had? Okay, thank you. Next is council member comments. Let's start with Councilmember Harrington.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor Machaca.
Real briefly, October 10th is La Casa's dinner. Our chief is going to be our guest speaker, and Kim Baldonado is, who is a local girl, and who was also a former, she was part of our preschool too at La Casa, is going to be our MC. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Costanzo.
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Leal.
Yes, September 12, attend the CPUC, that's California Public Utility Commission meeting. It's a voting meeting at the Cal State LA, and it's first time ever they hold the meeting in Southern California. And I understand they're going to rotate, throughout the state, and not just based in San Francisco anymore. And that day, I believe there's about 100 people show up, and every one of them spoke. And I did speak about we passed the balanced energy resolution on August 20th, and actually we just part of the 85 cities passed that resolution. And so we want to have a better energy policy in the state of California. So I hope they listen. But it's a great meeting, and so hopefully we'll see them coming back again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Leal. Let's see. I'll just report briefly on the Mexican Independence Day performances on Friday night. Seemed to be very well attended and a very festive crowd. Rebecca told me that the mariachi had people up and dancing, which is great. So if you want to salsa, maybe that would be the better place. Folklorico, I know, Ballet Folklorico. Closer than dumplings and beer. So on September 19th, I'll be attending an 88 Cities Summit regarding sustainability practices. It's hosted in South Pasadena. It's also the COG Day, so I'll report back at the next meeting on COG Transportation Committee as well as board issues. Saturday, the 21st, is the San Gabriel Valley Economic Partnership Gala. Tuesday, September 24th, is the State of the City. He'll be here at the Mission Playhouse. And then on September 26th, we'll be hosting our first community-wide census meeting. I know staff is hard at work and inviting all the different stakeholders. We've adopted the title or the campaign slogan of We Count SG, and that our goal is to make sure we have a full, accurate, and inclusive count. I hope that a lot of stakeholders will be able to. I know there's maybe some conflicting events, but I feel like if we can get everybody in the same room, I hope it'll be a collaborative process where we can partner with a lot of the other community organizations, religious institutions, and so forth and so on. And of course, October 4th is dumplings and beer, so looking forward to that as well. And La Casa, I'm not sure I'll be able to attend, but I'll try to come for the first part of that as well. So with that, we are adjourned until our next regular session meeting on October 1st. October 1st here in the council chambers at 6:30 p.m. We're adjourned. Thank you.
You guys got a lot of stuff.